doing construction is relocating when necessary.
I think you probably need to plan for that, because I feel like there's all the liabilities and hazards you can never protect.
Right.
There's so many people there to protect every aspect of it, and then the project is underway. And
Right, and that will have to be taken under advisement once we have a clearer picture of the construction timeline.
Okay.
And what it truly entails, because we wouldn't want to have that impact
Right.
the event, or we have to look at, I don't want to put anything out there just yet or
I know.
alarm
I know.
anyone in any
I know.
way.
I know.
But
Just thinking ahead, because
we just know
right
that it will be a better place to have that event in the future, once
yes.
this work is done.
So to go back to the accessibility question, I think Patty's asking, because I think maybe we saw a similar thing, that there's concerns about accessibility now at Old Mountain Field. And so while this is a great project for the future, are there things that can be done quickly to address accessibility for others to enjoy the facility now before it gets upgraded?
It's a difficult question, because to start to construct accessible pathways, there is code and regulatory requirements that have to be met on a state and federal level, and that makes it difficult to dig up, construct, and then turn around and undo it all in a year's time. We will certainly look at what we have available now based on some of the feedback we've gotten, and how we might be able to either cone off or somehow designate an area, but it's a fine line in terms of providing accessibility and still meeting compliance and guidelines.
But it sounds like you are at least looking at some potential, exploring an interim option, right? You're going to investigate whether it's possible.
Yes, there's an area that right now the Waves use as their ticket table, at least as far as, if it's still the same, I haven't been there this year yet. That is not a parking area. However, it is still on the asphalt. That is potential, but there is a curb, and then there's the grass slope. But it's also can be a little dicey, because it's still technically part of the parking lot. So if we can accommodate in some way in that area, we can certainly try to do that. It won't be ideal, but that's what we would be initially looking at. We can look at it again and more closely.
Okay. I appreciate you looking into it and trying to get at least some options or investigate every possibility.
Sure.
So thank you.
The governor's office also has the Commission on Disabilities, that I think may have either some expertise and advice or maybe some funding for temporary solutions as well.
Yes, I have been in touch with the Governor's Commission on Disabilities.
Great.
And have had a conversation with the same contact that advised us on the boat ramp
Thank you.
pathway. So.
On a different topic, part of your presentation was about the high school project and it impacting Hazard Field and Curtis Corner. How are you planning for that? What is the impact going to be? And I know you've got somebody that wears two hats.
Yeah. So So obviously we'll have start with the Curtis Corner site, and we have David on our commission here. That the football field is being relocated. It's being pulled out of the wetland, technically, and brought up, and the whole delineation and configuration of that athletic site. So I would imagine, I'm not sure if the timeframes, Dave, have been produced, just because the bond had just passed, so I'm not sure what the timeframes are going to be and how that lines up with athletic seasons, and how that could then affect potentially those athletic seasons. But I would imagine that there would be a level of impact there. And as far as Hazard Field, that's a practice field, yes, so obviously that's in essence going to be taken offline. Yeah.
That's pretty close. It's probably 2 years that we'll lose Hazard Field for sure. Two seasons. It might be 3 years, but not 3 academic years because we'll use the summer. But as Will said, it's still to be determined. There's a big decision point on Curtis Corner. If we go with a turf field, we can do work through the winter. If we go with a grass field, that changes the sequencing. All of that's going to be looked at very soon, but we don't have an answer now. I would say, just for general guidelines, we've talked to the athletic director, and we're expecting all of the Curtis Corner, the high school athletics and the middle school athletics to be using Curtis Corner through the fall of 2025. There was some discussion about, we'll take it off after this season. I don't see any way we get the environmental permits in place by then, so we'll run through the fall season of 2025, start construction there, and the goal would be to have the 2026 season on the new athletic stadium. But all of that has to be worked out.
Okay, I may be jumping too far ahead. Just like Terry was talking about, staging the construction impacts what you can use and where. You're not there yet.
No.
Okay.
But in speaking with the athletic director, there's really, he's not concerned about relocating for the short term. He's very comfortable. He'll have the ability to do it. The fall season is the hardest, so if we can keep it down to only losing one fall season or potentially no fall seasons, he's very comfortable if we only have to impact the spring season.
Okay, thank you.
Terry, I want to ask you about the accessibility Phase 1A here again. Now, Randy said that would take about a construction season and a half to fully complete that. Is there a way we could accelerate it, get it done in one construction season to sort of move this along as it is a priority? What would that take for us to do?
To be quite honest, I do not know. I mean, that is definitely a question for construction manager for once we are able, and we could probably build that into the bid specifications to say that we have a timeline for completing the project that would help us stay on track. I mean, that would be the way I would proceed, but I am not an engineer or a contractor. I don't really know. We would have to get quotes, and we would have to get contractor input on what is realistic for this scope of project in terms of time frame and how quickly it could be accomplished. The Waves are aware and are quite excited about the improvements because it benefits them as well. They understand that there could be some disruption. We are fortunate to have other baseball fields in town. Certainly, it's not Old Mountain Field, but we do have other baseball fields that if we had to, we could certainly relocate, reschedule games. It might be a reality. I don't want to set expectations that this is going to happen, in between seasons.
All right, that's fair. Maybe when you come back to us to approve the bidder of your selection, that you can review with us as to what the timeline is at that time, and hopefully we can shoot for one construction season, get this thing done, Phase 1A. Make sense? Or no?
We're happy to do that.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just to summarize, if you could summarize this project's next couple of steps, it's between June and January, what could we see, what would the community see moving in forward, and what would be happening?
Ideally, we would like to be able to go out to bid in late fall, early winter, so
Okay.
before the year ends, and have something back. And I'll defer to Randy because he's advising us on the timeline, to have some bids over the winter and be able to award a bid late winter, early spring.
Okay. So right now, you're drawing the specifications so that then you would share that with companies that might be interested, who then would go out, you put it out to bid. You'd have some specs. I'm not a design person, so I have no idea.
The bid specs, once beta is done with them, we will have the specifications. That's when we will advertise for bid.
And what's the expected date of completion for that phase?
That's the construction season and a half that I was speaking of.
No, the specs.
Oh, getting the specs done?
Yeah.
Probably, we're talking about the end of November, so we can bid at that time frame. Basically, what we want to do is be able to get it set up so that the contractor can start as early in the season as possible. One possibility is, this is to answer the council president's question about accelerating that time frame. One of the things that we can talk to the contractor once he's on board is getting certain things done during the winter months, so, during the summer months, so that he can be doing some of the work in the winter that's not as weather dependent, such as doing the fit and finishes in the building. And that might be a way to accelerate that.
Excellent. Let's do it.
It'll be dicey given the restrictions on time with the waves and the 4th celebration,
Yeah.
but it's something that we're endeavoring to do. We've already started thinking about that.
So best case, Phase 1A would be completed November 2025. Best case scenario.
The outdoor facility parts would be completed, and they'd be buttoning up the indoor of the building through that winter when they not subject to weather. So that could be like January, February 2026, but have all the exterior work all set by the end of the fall.
Okay. All right.
And if we can make it quicker, then we will.
Excellent. All right, thank you. All right, any other questions? Thank you guys for your time. We appreciate it. Great update. And we look forward to the progress we have going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to get things going here. Today is Monday, June 24, and we are here for our regularly scheduled town council meeting. First order of business, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land in which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. Next, we have the roll call.
Council President McEntee,
Here.
Council Vice President Marin,
Here.
Council Member Bergner,
Here.
Council Member Alley,
Here.
Council Member Sweet.
Here.
Everyone is present.
Thank you. At this point, I do want to recognize the recent passing of Walter Gray. Walter was a former member of the town council for 2 terms from 1970 to 1974 and served as the council president from 72 to 74. He later went on to become an elected state senator and served several terms up at the State House. So on behalf of the council, we want to thank his family for his service, and we send them our condolences, and we wish them well in this time of grievance. We're going to move on now. Next item on the agenda is item 5, approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Motion to approve item 5A, B, C, and as well as the closed executive from June 10th. Is that correct? That's not on the agenda.
And to seal the minutes of those executive
And seal
sessions.
the minutes of those, so moved.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
It can just be noted for the record, no votes were taken at the executive session tonight.
Thank you, Amy. All right, we got a motion, a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. That's going to bring us to item 6, the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. At this time, we're going to move up communication item 12E, an email dated June 18, 2024 from Carolyn Maxwell requesting wheelchair access at Old Mountain Field. Carolyn, if you're here, I invite you up. Thank you. We talked a little bit in the work session, touched on this a little bit. We're going to be an opportunity to talk. We're also going to bring up our Director of Leisure Services, Terry Murphy, to talk further on this.
You can.
Yep, the button on your right. There you go.
Thank you. Last week, I sent an email to the town council about a posting from a community Facebook page, Good in My Hood, South Kingstown, and I didn't know it would land me on the town council agenda. But as neighbors and friends of Julie Romano, Miles Island, and Bob Island, it really hit home for me. And I wasn't aware of all of the plans, the master plan in place, or the time frame. Very interesting to hear things discussed tonight in the work session. I just wanted to offer my support and also say that there will be more people than you know who will be helped by these plans. As the mother of a special needs child who has balance issue, vision issues, having even terrain, an asphalt path to walk on for a community activity at Old Mountain Field makes a big difference in her life. And also to read a few of the comments of grandparents who had been unable to attend activities for their children, their grandchildren there. It just hit home to me what an important matter of inclusion and accessibility this is, and I appreciate the President's mindfulness of how fast can we get this done. For any time allotted, I would like to just defer to Julie Romano, Romero. Okay, as really the experts who have, concerns to share. Thank you.
There we go. My name's Bob Romero. I am Miles' bonus dad, and I want to speak to the fact that the general public, administrators, bureaucrats, and politicians seem largely to be ignorant of the fact that compliance with the ADA doesn't truly equal accessibility. It is a step forward from the past, but it's insufficient for true accessibility. On the renderings we saw, it did not seem that there was any way for someone in a wheelchair to sit either immediately adjacent to the bleachers or have a space within the bleachers that they could park to enjoy watching something with friends or family. They had to be up on the highest terrace and be stuck there, and so anybody who wanted to sit next to them would have to bring their own chair and possibly be in the way of pedestrian flow. We went to a ball game last week, and we had to hang out in the parking lot to watch the game. When you design and build new restrooms, please remember what I'm telling you. ADA compliance does not equal to accessibility. Your designers and builders need to think in terms, at the very least, of someone in a large power chair with an attendant that needs to fit into a stall together. You need to make sure that any entryway into a bathroom that someone who has accessibility needs can get in easily. So there has to be a way to open the door or a design that doesn't have a door that you have to open. Ramps in the ADA, you can meet it with a 1 in 12 grade. If you are a marathon wheelchair racer, 1 in 12 grade, not a problem. If you are elderly, if you are disabled, and you're trying to push a chair by yourself, 1 in 12 will meet code, but it's tough. It's really tough. You should try it sometime yourselves. Go get in a manual wheelchair and go up ramps. Try and get in bathrooms.
Try to get in the door downstairs here.
So just in terms of the rec department's plans and upgrades, that's a thing, and it's also going to be a thing for the high school. I've looked at some of the preliminary plans online, and the architectural firm doing this does not get all of these details that people need for true accessibility. I don't know what in the budget they have for the short term that they can do at Old Mountain Field, but it would be nice to watch a ball game not having to hang out in the parking lot. Anything else you want to bring up?
No, well, we will that, we'll write some stuff down and send it.
Okay, so we'll probably bother you again with written stuff. So thank you for listening to me, and bear these things in mind. ADA compliance does not equal to accessibility. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Terry, you want to come up, speak shortly? Randy, you come up as well. I know you spoke a little bit on this in our work session, which was immediately preceding the beginning of the meeting here. But if you just want to touch on some of the things that we foresee going forward and ways we can factor in some of the concerns that were just addressed here.
Sure, thank you. Terry Murphy, Director of Leisure Services. Yes, I would first like to thank the Romeros for bringing this to our attention, to providing the feedback on the difference between ADA and true accessibility. Certainly we can appreciate that that is something that we need to examine as we move forward with the specifications for Old Mountain Field. I did have a conversation with Mrs. Romero this morning, and we will certainly, people who live it tend to be the experts. So certainly we seek public input, and we have had we had public work sessions back last summer, but certainly that's not done. So we will certainly welcome the input and the feedback in terms of how we proceed with our design. Andy?
And one of the things that we at Beta really strive for is not just meeting the letter of the law, but making it as accessible and truly accommodating as possible. So the rendering was an early rendering. That upper level that I was speaking to is something that we are viewing as an additional seating area, so there will be seating up there as well. And then the plans, what we're looking at right now is on the third base side of the the sort of stadium seating looking out over the baseball field is having a switchback that allows you to go from that level to the next level down. If we can do it with the other ones as well, we'll do that, but it's something that we take very seriously, and we will definitely make the best effort within the site constraints and the budget to make sure that that is something that is welcoming for everybody.
All right. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Terry. And thank you for bringing it to our attention. Go ahead, come on up. Can you come to the microphone?
If you want to get it done in one construction season, it can be done, it just takes more money.
And we know that. All right, any thoughts up here?
I just wanted to just say thank you for getting up and speaking. One for the bonus dad for speaking, because I think you really were very educative about just because the door is ADA. I work with someone who has a motorized scooter, and it is very much a challenge for that person to navigate our office, even though the office was built with ADA compliance. So elevating that education to the community is also important, and I just wanted to thank you for that. But I also wanted to thank your neighbor or friend, Mrs. Maxwell, because with your advocacy, you opened the door to everyone understanding the situation here. And I think a lot of people would just not take the time and make the effort to say, this bothers me and I want to do something. You didn't know what the something would do. Here you are, the star of the meeting. But I just wanted to say thank you for coming, and continue to advocate in any way that you can to make our community better, because I do think that it needs to be more welcoming and accessible to all. Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, thank you. And by controlling the budget, we will do what we can to accelerate this. So I'm happy you pointed out what we all knew. Thank you. All right, we're going to move back up now to item 7, licenses. A is a resolution granting a victualling license to Oatsley 6, Inc., doing business as Oatley's 2, Kingstown Road, Wakefield, application by Vaughn Oatley. Vaughn, if you're here, come on up. All right, so we all have an idea what this is about, taking over the old Breakfast Nook location. Yes. We're all excited about it, but we want to hear more about it from you guys, so go ahead.
All right, well, as you can see, he's my father, and what our goal here is to bring Oatley's 2 as our I'm a third generation Oatley's person. My grandfather and my grandmother owned Oatley's in North Kingstown. He was second generation, and now we're going here with third, and we're trying to bring back a lot of that good food and traditional home-baked, homemade stuff to South Kingstown, and we're really excited to hopefully bring it to you guys soon. So
Excellent.
We're very thankful.
When is Target open date? Going to be open 7 days a week? What are we looking at for hours?
As soon as we can. We're hopefully within a couple of days, whatever we can do to get it going as soon as possible. We're really thrilled to bring it as soon as we can. We're ready to see the community and be back in it. Our goal is to do 6 days a week, 6:30 to 2:30 for right now.
Excellent.
Might change a little bit, but we'll see.
Any questions up here? Good.
I think you're going to be very successful. I think you're going to fill a need in the community. I think people are anxious. I've seen posts on social media that people are ready for you. We drove by the other day. Looks like you've decorated too. So is it enough space? How many people can you serve at one time?
50.
50. Oh, it doesn't seem that big, but I think.
When you walk inside, it'll seem a lot bigger than it is.
Okay.
We've tried to make it seem bigger when you walk in, but also have that little bit of homey atmosphere, which is kind of nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
A couple days away. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
I'm very excited to see you guys open, and I cannot wait for a turkey sandwich on your awesome bread. And I know other people share my excitement because everybody keeps saying it. So, yay.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Any other thoughts? Do I hear a motion on this item?
Motion to approve item 7A.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Good luck. We look forward to it.
Thank you all so much.
All right, that's going to bring us to public hearings. 8A is a public hearing relative to adoption of the fiscal year 24-25 position allocation pay schedule as shown in Exhibit 1 attached here 2. This time we're going to turn it over to Luke Murray, Deputy Town Manager.
Thank you. Just need 1 second and I'll get the presentation out. All right. So we're here to review the non-union position and pay allocation schedule under the public hearing, and then we'll be following on with the benefits summary, which is not under the hearing, which is the next agenda item. I'll give you a high-level overview. Right now, the changes that we're going to be making are under ordinance under 1331B, which requires that we review the pay plan and rules for non-union. This provision goes back before we had unions. So essentially anyone not under a collective bargaining agreement. And then I'll be reviewing any changes that we have to date. It's important to note that all of these changes and everything included here was already approved on the adopted budget plan, which was approved back in April. So funding is in place for all of these changes. I know this is small. It is in your memo that I've written outlining the different steps. We have 19 different grades comprising of 4 different steps. Just for reference, everything in step 0 is a probationary step. So typically when somebody starts, they have a 6-month probationary period, and then they move to step 1, and then it's annually after that. Changes this year, we have the addition of a Community Learning Center coordinator. This goes hand in hand with the recent grant we received for the $2.5 million from the State Pandemic Recovery Office. Good news is that we have received word that we may receive an additional allocation on top of the $2.5 million to increase funding. And as you know, we also received a $700,000 congressionally directed spending grant through Congressman Magaziner's office, which is also in play. So the commitment under the state is to program the space and actively program the space for 5 years, minimum 5 years. In order to do this and do it right, we felt it's best to have a staff member dedicated to that effort and show the commitment of SK, which was a big deal in putting our best foot forward to receive those grant monies. So half of that year has been budgeted for the upcoming year. We expect to recruit that position in January. The next position is the addition of a deputy building official. It's important to know that we will not be filling an NEA building inspector positions. We're essentially elevating this position to make it as close to budget neutral as possible without having to add. This position is key because, as many of you may or may not know, building officials throughout the state are extremely difficult to get. So if you lose one, it's difficult, very difficult to recruit. Many of the building trade in the building trade industry right now stay in the building trade industry as carpenters, workers, etc. And they pay much better. Many who cross over are in it for more of the benefits and stability of schedule. So to that end, we've already moved in this direction because we lost our building inspector, unfortunately, just prior to making this move. And so we did promote from within. We do have an individual occupying this position. They're actively engaged, but they are required to get CBO credentials as part of this new position. So essentially I have 2 CBOs where most communities struggle to get 1, which I think would be a big achievement. Do you have any questions at this time before I move on? Okay. Number 3, tax collector, we're proposing to reassign from grade 11 to grade 12. This came out of a statewide salary survey that we reviewed. Numbers that was provided to the league in 2022. They did the salary survey, and we noticed that our tax collector was significantly underpaid by $4,000 to $6,000. Again, everyone at municipal level is tough to recruit. Our current tax collector was promoted from within. We were very lucky. She took over the helm and has done a fantastic job. So we felt that making the move based on this comp study was the right thing to do, and retaining that employee and making sure that we have consistency moving forward. Number 4 is the water superintendent. We're proposing to reassign from grade 12 to grade 13. Again, this was based on a statewide salary survey. This position was significantly undervalued for our SK. We've made one grade move this year to get this position assigned, but this is a licensure required position, meaning we have to have a water licensure in order to operate the water department. And just as a point of reference, our current communications director, Lance, has taken over this role because he happens to have his licensure when we've been down on this position. This is an important position, as they all are, but this is especially important because we rely on that licensure. So again, identifying that this was an underpaid position, and in order to retain that employee, we've proposed to elevate them to a grade 13. Any questions? Okay. Number 5, addition to the deputy planning director. Again, you see a trend over the past couple of years. We've been moving to create continuity of services. And what that means is that if a director goes down, we have somebody right there to back up. In addition, we have another member of the team just when directors take a vacation or out for a short break due to medical. We have somebody to step right up into that place and take over the staff roles and also the responsibility. The planning director is a big one. They serve as the administrative officer under state law, and when they're down, and especially for long-term periods, you need somebody to step in and continue to keep the works moving. This is where a lot of towns falter. When the director goes, you get no approved plans. Nothing comes out for months. So by having this, it creates that real consistency to make sure that we're operating. Again, this would propose that essentially taking that principal planner role and elevating them. We're not truly adding a position, we're reforming it. And then the library director, again, I talked about the community learning center. That is also another responsibility on the library director. In addition to that position, the library director has been outstanding. She's been lockstep with me and others along the way, getting the grant, ensuring compliance, doing programming. She was out Saturday getting community input on the new community learning center, and that's expected to continue over the next year and beyond. So we're proposing to move that position from a grade 13 to a grade 14. Do you have any questions on the proposed changes that I've outlined?
Luke, I got a question for you.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Deb. Yeah, go ahead.
So can we just go back to the community librarian position? First of all, I'm glad that we're talking about it because I think the community is still not aware of what will happen in Peacedale. I don't know if you all got an email inviting you to a listening session. Is Laurel here? I got an email. There's a community listening session regarding the community library. Came in my email to my home. So, but I have a question. I know that the senior center also has a similar position. So, who helps people sign up for Medicare? That's one of the main functions of this person, as I understood it. So, are we keeping? It seems like we're keeping both positions.
So, it's a good question. It is a very different role, just to be clear. The senior center is really about helping elderly individuals sign up for things like Medicare, Medicaid, things like along those lines. This position is actually to program the space under 3 main categories: workforce training, education, and essentially medical supports, health monitoring. And each one of those categories has to have active programming. So this person would be expected to go to our partners like Johnny Cake, Education Exchange, others, and say, hey, listen, we want you to use our facility, create programming, assist us, and also create program to actively use the center. Health monitoring, coordinating with the community paramedic program, making sure, having classes, scheduling those classes, getting community in. So it's a lot of active participation, whether we facilitate events or bringing community partners to the table. So it's more about operating and overseeing that center. That person will also be stationed on a daily basis as a resource at a resource desk. So if people come in, let's say they want to do telehealth and they don't know what to do, they can tell them, okay, check out a laptop, go here, do this, here's the appropriate station. So it's a lot of different things rolled into this.
One last thing on that. I'm very careful about creating any new FTEs. We're getting feedback on yours and mine. Can you shut your mic?
Sorry.
Thanks. We're getting, I'm very careful about full-time employee positions because there's a lot of liabilities that come with them. But this one is required to get the grant, and this one is needed. But this community learning center is a major step forward for the town. Many municipalities chose not to do it because they did not want to add that FTE. We chose to do it, but think about it. We're getting approximately $3.2 million in grants to build a beautiful facility, build out a beautiful facility that we have now. And I was informed the other day, because so many communities are pulling back on this, we could get additional funds, substantial. So I can't give you that number yet because it's not definite. But so we've thought about this long and hard, but it's definitely well worth it. And if you look at the total liability to the town and what we get out of it, it's leaps and bounds way ahead.
I just recall the meeting where they said that they were going to help seniors sign up for Medicare and things like that. So then I'm like, well, is the seniors...
That's a good question, but the one from the senior center really does have a niche, and this one has a niche, but it's also required that we fit those other three areas that the senior center does not. So we could not spread one position and morph it into this as well. We needed a new position to run that community learning center, not just provide support.
Okay. Thank you.
So Luke, a few questions here for you. The addition of the deputies here, the deputy building official and the deputy planning director, we're essentially ridding of a principal planner and replacing it with a deputy planning director, and then we're ridding of a building inspector and replacing with a deputy building official. Am I correct with that?
That's correct. The little caveat to that is we're looking to possibly hold on to the principal planner position, but the senior planner position may get vacated. So we'd post the principal planner. Potentially the senior planner might want it. If they were to move into that position, we wouldn't fill the senior planner position. The principal planner is just a little higher level complexity position. But yes, the goal here is to reduce the budgetary impact, not add a full-time equivalent position.
Okay. And our goal toward creating a deputy in each department, a deputy to each department head, does this sort of fill that void, just adding these two, or are there still departments where there is not a deputy position?
It does. There are a few departments that still do not have that deputy position. One chief among them is EMS. As they continue to grow, we'd have to potentially evaluate looking at a deputy chief. We looked at that, but as the town manager said during the budget process, we look at every one of these positions, and we have future plans, but we can't take a large swing all in 1 year. So the idea is that we're building up, as part of the methodology, these deputy positions. And we added some last year. The deputy assessor position was one of them.
Okay.
One thing on that. One of the tenets of good government is continuity of operations. Person goes down, sick, ill, dies, whatever, a director. Someone has to fill in immediately. If someone goes out for surgery for 3-4 months, someone has to fill in. Someone needs to be responsible. There's 3 areas that motivate people to work very hard: title, time off, and pay. And we're trying to balance all that. We're not creating new FTEs for these deputy positions. We're upgrading their title, giving them a nominal bump in pay, and also giving a nominal bump in time off. And it's worked very well. So these deputy positions, I fully support, and I think, like Luke said, we might have 1 or 2 others that we would need in the future. We don't want to get it all done in 1 year. This is like part of our long-term plan.
So, do you mind?
Go ahead.
I don't want to step on your toe.
Go ahead.
So planning is the one area that I feel a little bit of a concern about, because we do ask a lot of Jamie Rabbit, and we have really high expectations of performance and deliverables, and we push a lot, and he's got a lot going on. And I'm just a little nervous that we're reorganizing the department, but we're really not helping him have more hands to do the work. So
That's a valid concern. That department does have a large workload, and we're getting more as we move forward with plans that I've been sharing with the council for affordable housing and rezoning and so forth and so on. So yes, this is the first step. Then we'll look more into what the staffing that's there, does that meet the needs? And if it doesn't, then we'll come back to you for possible help on that as well in the future.
because in some ways it's a good shift of people, but it doesn't necessarily have more help in the department. And so everything, planning is in everything that affects the community so much. And I feel like in my head, I see all those other meetings where Jamie is here and talking about Old Tower Hill Road, rezoning marijuana facilities 3 times. I mean, he's done a lot. And so I just don't want to not pay attention to that when it's the same people.
We are. This is restructuring a department, and this is the first step. So each department is, we did it with building inspector's office last year, right? We added a person. So the conversation's continuing with planning. I assure you that we'll meet all the needs and talk to the director there, as well as what he needs to move forward.
Thank you.
And this could be a good opportunity to expand the planning department by adding a deputy planner, keeping the principal planner, and then also keeping the senior planner possibility.
Yeah, that's part of our restructuring plan, to look at all this. But once again, I'd like to go one step at a time. This is the first step.
All right.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to raise this as a concern, and I'm glad to hear it's in your future examination of that office, because I think, again, we ask a lot, we expect a lot. We all want things to move faster than they do, and so they're limited by their 35-hour work week and 3 people, and another 4 people there. So thank you for paying attention there.
Point taken. Thank you.
I just want to also to agree with that as well. I think we could really use some extra help in that department. Thank you.
These deputy positions, are there going to be any that can cover multiple departments?
So
No.
Yeah, the short answer is no. To the earlier points, I will tell you, Jim and I work with these directors on a daily basis, and the deputies. They're tasked out. They have full workloads within the department, and they're working hard.
Well, one last thing on that. So we've had a good year with the budget, a 0% tax increase, which is pretty unheard of most of the time. And they were coming to you tonight with a surplus. That doesn't happen by accident. That's because of this workforce. And I mean it. This workforce, they all work very hard to deliver the best possible services at the lowest possible price. It's a balance. And that's why we come to you with things like this. We need to keep this workforce intact without getting poached by another municipality. And it happens. So one of the biggest challenges to a town manager right now, because I go to all the League of Cities and Towns, is keeping good people working for you and not leaving and going somewhere where they're getting extra money, title, or more time off. We're competitive with everyone else. We strive to keep it at that at a nominal cost. And Greg, Councilman Sweet, to answer your question, it wouldn't be fair to any deputy to try and multitask in other departments. They really don't mix. If it could have, probably would have thought of it, but it really wouldn't. They work hard. They work very hard where they are and doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. I was just thinking if you had someone out in one department where a deputy would be filling in, odds are that you wouldn't have that happening in 2 or 3 different departments at once. So I figure if you had one that was cross-trained that could fill in, but if not, that's fine.
If we ever had to have someone fill in because both are out, he's sitting right across from me right there. So there's the guy. He's the multitasker.
So it can be done.
It can be done.
South Kingstown's utility outfielder.
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of don't like if someone goes down. I like to say we just have to have a very deep bench that anybody can get up and play ball, as opposed to like somebody goes down
Well,
and
that's
dies.
a very nice way of saying it, so we'll just put it your way then.
Yeah, thank you. No one's going down.
That's how the Celtics want it, right? Deep bench?
Deep bench.
All right.
We got it.
All right, so this is a public hearing. So anyone who wishes to speak on this item specifically, I invite you to come on up. We just ask that you introduce yourself, and we'll limit you to 5 minutes. So with that said, anyone who wishes to speak, come on up.
you miss one meeting, you forget what you put in the push. Okay, so when I was looking at the schedule there in the agenda, I didn't see a line item for the town manager. The reason I'm asking that question is because I believe when Mr. Manny was hired, he was, part of his contract said that if the superintendent of schools receives a raise that is a number that's above what he's making, then he'll then have his salary raised to that point. And I know, from what I read, that they've hired the new superintendent at $175,000. I wasn't sure. I don't know if that's would be a raise for Mr. Manny or it's not. So, but I was wondering why his one line item is not in that.
Go ahead, Luke.
So it's actually, you read my mind. That was one of my slides. But to the point, the manager is a contracted employee directly with the town council. So typically we don't include him directly in a non-union pay schedule because he's not really a non-union employee per se in the administration. However, the town council has full discretion to adjust compensation under that contract. I included a slide on this because in the contract it does say for consideration in such amounts as determined desirable based on the annual salary review conducted, and with consideration given to other non-union employees, which we're considering tonight. So I would be, as a director of personnel, looking for some direction on which way the council would like to go on that topic. So,
Doral, thank you for trying to get me a raise. I really appreciate it, but thank you. Yeah. Luke brought it up, yeah, but I'm very satisfied with what I'm compensated for in this town. I do make a little more than what the superintendent makes because of some cost adjustments over the past few years. But when we went in executive session, the council did ask if I was looking for more compensation. I said I did not, other than the annual salary adjustment made to all town employees. I would not ask for anything more than what I'm giving to the other employees. That's a tenet of leadership. That's leadership 101. Never take more than what you're giving. So that's what I would respectfully ask for tonight, is just whatever the other employees get, I would get that same amount, whatever it is.
And either Jim or Luke, if I recall correctly, that we did take that into account in passing the budget, that there was going to be 2% attributed to the town manager's office. I assumed that was going to come under item 9A. With your memo from last week.
Last year we did it as a whole separate business item. We wove it into tonight because it's kind of a strange topic. You know, it probably should have been considered even when the contract was ratified. So certainly take guidance tonight on that. But yes, it was 2% for all non-unions, which was included in the adopted budget. That did include the town manager.
All right.
So, Amy, do we need a motion then?
I think it was already adopted in the budget, but a motion would be appropriate to just grant the town manager the same 2% increase as included within the budget.
Should that come after the public hearings close?
Yeah, that can come, I think, when we get to 9A.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this public hearing? All right. Seeing none, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All right. We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. The public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion on 8A?
Motion to approve item 8A.
Second.
All right. We got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just want to take the opportunity to just personally thank the staff and the non-union staff that work very hard, and we, like I said about the planning office, we expect a lot of the directors and the staff, and we recognize they go above and beyond. The council asks for a lot of information. There's 5 of us always ping-ponging around Jim, and he gets it from all the staff, so we want to recognize the very talented and skilled staff we have, and I hope that they continue to stay here.
Agreed. Thank you, Deb. Any other thoughts? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. That's going to bring us now to new business. Item A. Luke?
Yeah, so I'll be brief. Again, as I mentioned earlier, part of the ordinance prescribes that we have to adopt said rules. We interpret that as the benefit schedule for non-union employees. Again, all changes that I'm proposing were included in the adopted budget for this year. Just to review, with the biggest benefits that we provide, medical and dental is not changing, although, as we know, medical and dental did increase upwards of 9%. I'm sorry, not 9% this year, 4.5%, right, Brian? 4.6? 4.6%, I apologize. But our co-shares have not changed. We're not proposing any benefit plan changes, et cetera. The big one this year was just a holiday adjustment. We were forced into this. The state adopted Juneteenth. We just had that holiday. All non-unions did have it off. If we don't provide that off and they have to work, it's time and a half. So we've elected to give them that holiday. But all other benefits remain unchanged. Last year we made some substantial shifts in time off, et cetera. Nothing additional this year.
All right, any questions for Luke? Go ahead.
Just, not unlike the compensation for the manager that was incorporated into the budget, we did the same with the solicitor.
So the solicitor was included under the budget already. We had talked to the solicitor during the budget process. So I did talk to Mike about that. They should be all set within the actual budget document. He does not need to be voted on separately.
Okay, so just the manager?
Just the manager. In case you were, and the reason is in case you decided to go outside the 2% bounds, which is within your right, that this would be the appropriate time to do it.
All right, any thoughts, questions for Luke? Do I hear a motion on this item?
Motion to approve item 9A. I have to add more?
Inclusive of the manager's 2%?
Oh. Sure.
Amy?
Inclusive of the town manager as requested, 2%.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Jim, I just wanted to say thank you for, working with us for all this time, and I do think you bring a lot. I said in executive session, you bring a lot to the table and help bring things forward, and you could ask for anything, and you are a humble servant leader, only asking for the same that you're asking for your employees, and I applaud you for that, so thank you.
I said this in executive session, but I would like to say it in public too, so I don't think I'm humble, but...
You are.
No, it's an honor to be the town manager. I live in the community, I've lived here for over 25 years. I love my job, and I get motivated when I see the town moving forward with some great things that we're all working on, so I appreciate the vote of confidence in the 3-year contract, and also for having the faith in me. One other thing, all the deputies and directors, even if they're not here, they're watching tonight, they have expressed to me how appreciative they are that the council supports them. So once again, it works for everyone, so thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Luke. Keep up the good work.
Thank you for your leadership, Jim.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item B. Brian Sylvia, come on up.
Good evening. Before you this evening is the projected year-end results and year-end reserve transfers for fiscal year 23-24. The town is projecting at this time a year-end surplus of $2,039,103 for fiscal year 23-24, which will be ending on June 30th of this year. That can be broken down further to revenue exceeding budget by $1,425,735 projected, or 70% of the projected surplus, and expenditures coming in under budget by $613,000 or $613,368, or 30% of the surplus on the expenditure side coming in under budget. Drivers on the revenue side is as we've spoken about many times through the budget process, is the investment income. That represents 82% of the overage on revenue of the town. The investment income was budgeted at $400,000, and it was exceeded budget by just under 1.2 million. On the expenditure side, it's much more evenly spread out. You'll see most departments projected to finish the year between 95 and 98% of their operating budget, which was allotted to them. So obviously, in terms of the drivers, the larger departments would make up more, but this really, to the points of the last conversation, speaks to this town and the employees in place, as it was strong fiscal management this year throughout the town, as it was really throughout all departments, making up the under budget on the expense side. That was really it was spread out through many of the departments. And that was both through fiscal management and some vacancies throughout various departments as well. In terms of what is being proposed for year-end transfers through the surplus of operations, the town is proposing $150,000 to the compensated absences. This fund was established to cover costs associated with future compensation for unused sick and vacation time of employees upon their separation from the town. This is not an item that has been budgeted for in the past. Typically, the town will enact a transfer at year end to cover this expense and to build up this fund. The next is a $15,000 transfer to the Technology Improvement Fund. This transfer would cover the costs of replacing 3 uninterrupted power supply units. These units keep the network running when the town loses power and before the generator kicks in. Next would be a transfer of $200,000 to the Employee Claims and Settlement Fund. This fund is related to any claims or settlements which are generally unforeseen and unbudgeted for, and this will build the reserve of this town for this fund should anything arise. And finally, on the surplus from operations, there is a transfer proposed of $500,000 to the debt service fund. And this being, the point of this being to continue to build up that fund so the funds are available to mitigate the cost of the future debt obligations of the town related to the new high school bond project. Currently, the debt service fund, per the FY23 audit, has $2.4 million in it, so this would move it to just under $3 million in that fund. Finally, as part of this document each year, the town also looks for authorization to move the budgeted funds to the OPEB fund. So within the FY24 operating budget, there was $90,000 that was budgeted for OPEB. And part of this document also approves the transfer of that $90,000 to the town's OPEB fund. Overall, the transfers from operations total $865,000, and with a surplus of $2,039,000, that would result in just under $1.2 million. It would be projected as $1,174,103 that would be moved to the town's unassigned fund balance. Within fiscal year 24, the town utilized $1,043,608 to balance the budget. So this would be replenishing that fund and adding in $130,000 for several reasons. One being, again, this is a projection at this time. The year is not over, and we would like to ensure that we are replenishing that use of fund balance. So we are going over a little bit just to ensure that we are replenishing that $1,043,000. The next being, or most importantly, again, we have 3 union contracts that are up. Should those contracts exceed what has been budgeted for within the current year, the town would need to come back to the council at that time when the contracts are ratified to likely use more use of fund balance. So we thought it best to move more money if we can into that fund at this time.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Any questions for Brian? Go ahead.
Did you say the 850 was going into the school building fund?
$500,000.
Why?
To build up that fund so that can be used to offset some of the payments that are going to be needed when those debt payments come online.
For the future?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's building up. Those funds will be available when the debt service payments come online.
Okay.
So Greg, he said it had $2.5 million, and with that additional 500, it'll be $3 million.
Mm-hmm.
Am I saying the wrong numbers? $3 million for debt service for future interest payments on the bond.
Go ahead.
I know we go through this during the budget process. Can you just remind us all what the best practices recommendation is from the Government Finance Officers Association for surplus?
Sure. So they recommend 2 months, which equates to just under 17%. I think it's 16.67% of the operating budget. And then the town has a policy, I apologize, I don't know if that's an ordinance or a resolution. We have a policy anyway that requires 10 to 17%. So this would keep us in line with that.
And where do we fall in with a $2,039,000 surplus for June 30?
It's a kind of a moving target right now because we're replenishing.
Fair enough.
Oh, yeah, we're replenishing the money that was used, that $1,043,000. But now, come 7/1, July 1st of this year, we're then drawing down approximately $1.8 million of the surplus. So it's kind of a moving target at this point.
Okay.
But we will be just north of the 17% anyway.
It's within the recommendations for best practices.
Correct.
Is that my point?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's greater.
It's on
Yes.
the higher end, correct?
Yes, it is.
It's good to be better and not be behind, but we don't want to be too far ahead because it's other people's money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. But I just was trying to follow along with this memo as you spoke because the memo is not, well, it is linked to the agenda, so if anyone wants to see it.
Correct. Actually, speaking of which, I'm sorry, I did notice something today, and I wanted to raise that point in terms of the memo. On page 3, the transfer for the compensated absences, the written portion of it references the transfer for compensated absences at $200,000, and then later on, where it's actually detailed out the amounts, it's $150,000. So that there is a typo on that $200,000 that was taken down when we were fine tuning it.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Any other questions?
So when we had the conversation during budget season, we did talk about healthcare costs, and you always have a placeholder. And then today you said it's 4.5%. What was the original placeholder? Do you remember?
I want to say 7.5, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
We were anticipating higher than anticipated because of the 9% plus from the prior year.
Yeah.
So we did have a little savings there, and that again, that's really goes into the pool of money that we have right now for those contracts that are unsettled.
Right.
We kind of have a pool right now, and that's part of it.
I was trying to recall because I know you're always estimating the healthcare costs, and so they're much less than we thought. But I understand you have some contract things that you're going to use some of that money for. Overall, from the original memo that I read, with about a $2 million surplus, what we did use $1 million for the budget, you're bringing back, and it's a net change of about 100 more, 130 more overall.
That's correct.
When you pay yourself back.
The only thing I would just say with that is, again, the year's not even over, so projected.
Right.
I would say projected with the start of every sentence with this. This makes me
But
very
Brian,
nervous.
it ends in 1 week?
Yeah, what's that?
The year end
It
ends in
does.
1 week?
It does. But we still have a payroll in there. We still have,
So.
All right.
I'll be happy when it's closed.
Well, thank you for your hard work, and I appreciate your explanations on all of the transfers.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing so well with the investments.
I have to give a lot of that to my deputy Rose. She's on that, if more than me, if not more than me. She does a great job, so I have to deflect a lot of that to my deputy.
Thank her too.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion on this item?
Motion to approve item, sorry, I lost my section.
9B.
9B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Rich Bourbonnais, come on up.
I like that you're ready, Rich.
What's that?
You're ready to go.
I'm ready to go. So I have 5 items here. The first two, and I'll get right to it, I'll try to make this painless, but the first two, C and D, are very similar. So we put out our contract, our RFP for 2 things through highway. It was for roadway materials and highway materials, and then also for our our drainage, concrete, curb, and all those types of hard products that we use out in the field. So the first one, item C, is for that. We received 4 bids on that request. Now, what we like to do with these contracts is we allow, we pull the best price from each different bidder. So in the case of our concrete or catch basins and geogrid and curbing and all that, we received 4 bidders on that project, but each bidder takes a portion of the items. So whichever items they bid lowest on. It really helps us to do it this way because we get really the best price for the individual products, and also it kind of spreads the wealth a little bit, so everybody has an opportunity. Even if you don't offer particular items, you can still bid on the ones you do offer. So so item C, again, drainage, concrete, curb, retaining wall materials. And I think I've explained that pretty well, I guess. So that would be item C. Item D would be for roadway, like I said, roadway materials. It's like processed gravel, stone, many different types of stone, either delivered or not delivered. So.
All right, any questions for Rich on those two? All right, do I hear a motion on C and D?
Motion to approve item 9, C, and D.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes.
Thank you. Item E is with respect to our required laboratory testing that we have to do for a number of different items, primarily with the wastewater treatment plant, but also this has to do with some of our MS4 requirements, highway testing, things of that sort. Microbac was the lowest qualified bidder. They are our, presently we're using them. We've had very good success with them, and we'd like to kind of continue that for 24, 25. I would like to make note of, we did have sign a new permit with DEM for our wastewater treatment plant. Their latest permit, and I think this came up at one point, but their latest permit requirements includes a lot more testing. And that's reflected in this bid. You'll see that we're about $13,000 more than we were last year on some of our analytical testing. And it's primarily related to PFAS. No.
All right. Any questions for Rich on this one? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve item 9E.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
All right, thank you. So the next 2 items are related to the cell towers, or the cell tower at Victoria Lane, primarily. As you may recall, we are removing the pods that are located on the top of the tower. We're going to be putting back a railing. T-Mobile has already started to come down, and they're going down below the tank, but the other 2 carriers, AT&T and Verizon, will be moving on to the railing. So that's not happening until the fall, when we can take the tank offline for a little bit. But these 2, F and G, one is for, F is for Verizon specifically, and this is strictly related to changing what is the premises, and that's the location of their equipment. Item G is a little different in that AT&T is also asking for some additional lease space for a generator. So their rate's going up a little bit by $500 a month. So.
All right. Any questions for Rich on these 2? All right. Do I hear a motion on these?
Motion to approve 9, F, and G.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, those pass.
All right, thank you. And I'll be back with more Tuckett on another agenda. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Rich. All right, Deputy Chief Bucco, come on up.
Good evening. So the police department has
4 items. Oh, excuse me. 4 items on the agenda. The first one is we're seeking a resolution to extend our System Works contract. On September 23rd, 2019, the council approved an award to System Works LLC, which is known as Police DTS. In essence, that's our scheduling system. So it keeps us straight as far as scheduling overtime details, and also integrates with Munis, so we get our payroll out. We have 1 more year on that. It's a 5-year agreement, so we're asking for another resolution to extend that 1 more year at the same price of $13,200.
All right. Any questions? Go ahead.
Just very quick, because of the way the item on the agenda is worded, for 110 users.
Yes, sir.
It's not limited to the uniformed staff, it's the entire staff?
It is. It's the civilians and all the police officers. Correct.
Thank you.
And constables. So,
Yes.
and the constables do reimburse the town, anyone that uses that service, they would reimburse the town out of their pocket.
But you're required to have them under the license?
It is, yes. Yep. Yes, there's 56 sworn personnel, there's another 20, 30 civilians, and the rest are up to that number for constables, which need to get in that system, and they, once again, they would reimburse the town for that use.
All right. Correct. Any other questions? We'll hear a motion.
Motion to approve item 9H.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
All right, thank you. The next item is we're seeking a resolution to award a bid to Frontline Fitness out of Warwick, Rhode Island, to upgrade our current gym located inside police headquarters. Our gym was last upgraded in 2017, and it's in serious need of a facelift. So we went out to bid just to get it more contemporary, more functional for the officers to work out. You know, part of our new police contract with the IVPO, they do get paid time off to work out. And obviously fitness is paramount to our job, to stay physically and mentally fit. So therefore, we went out to bid, and we're asking for $13,808 to upgrade the current gym facility.
All right.
One item on that, this is not like a luxury that's given to the police officers. They went from an 8-hour shift to a 12-hour shift. And 12-hour shift, I've worked them, they're very long. And as you know, law enforcement is a very physically demanding job, working those shifts, especially in the evening. So most police departments that have that type of schedule, these extended shifts, they're allowed to have time off to eat and work out, which is 1 hour, which is more than enough. I had it when I was on the state police, and it really helped us stay fit and also keep us motivated. And then also, they all want to look like Major Bucco when they work out. But so, you know, this isn't something that we're just giving away to the police department. It's needed. Most police departments have this in their contracts, and that gym does need some upgrade.
Next, we're going to get a basketball court in there. We'll get some good runs in there.
If we had the room.
I played in the JD versus PD tournament. That was some fun times.
It was, yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We don't have the space.
So last meeting, we talked about, I can't remember the police purchase, but the chief said he was going to use the federal asset forfeiture fund. Just to note, this is coming from the state asset forfeiture fund, which is the thing both of those funds, we really learned a little bit more about last week. So just pointing it out. It's not part of the operating budget. It's from state asset forfeiture fund, just for everybody.
Yeah, I wish we brought that. That's a big part of this. That it's not coming out of taxpayer money. It's coming out of forfeitures that the police department has used over the years, where they seize items used in crimes, and they get to keep that money, and a portion of that money goes for uses such as this. That's very important to add.
Even better.
Yeah, that's my favorite kind of upgrade to be able to make. It doesn't cost us anything, so yay, good job.
Motion to approve item 9I.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item, it's a resolution requesting to reject an ammunition bid that we went out to bid on May 17th for our annual ammunition costs
for training and things of that nature for the police department. Our first bid was only returned with one bidder who bid on 2 out of the 8 items, which was not sufficient. Therefore, a week later, we went out to bid again, and we were able to get a successful bidder who bid on all 8 items. It is Eagle Point Gun out of Thoroughfare, New Jersey, reputable dealer we've dealt with in the past. So therefore, we're asking to reject the initial bid and then accept the secondary bid, which satisfied our needs.
All right. Any questions here?
So we make a motion to reject item 9J.
And pass item K.
And a motion to accept item 9K.
Yep, to approve
Second.
both.
Second.
All right, we got a motion to approve J and K. There is a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just have one question. So
Yes,
in,
ma'am.
It was just the way it was worded.
what did you say?
Approve, yeah,
All
approve.
right, let me
9J,
clarify.
right, approve
Reject
9J.
item J,
Yeah.
approve item K. That is the motion. There was a second or discussion. Go ahead.
So in the memo, it talked about you couldn't determine the price for the ammunition, and I don't want to put you on the spot because it depends on how many recruits you have going to the academy.
Yes.
It was just a very simple question. When would we know how many recruits I cannot speak, recruits we have? And I know there was a meet and greet, but is there any timeline for how many and such?
Yes, that's an excellent question. So we know how many recruits are going in the next academy, so we can plan accordingly for that. The academy is run twice a year, so there'd be 2 academy cycles in this fiscal year. Therefore, we can't account for the next academy class, which is contingent upon many factors: vacancies, the allowable seats that we get when we apply to the academy, how many people we lose. So it's kind of a moving target in that sense. But we earmarked no more than $17,000. That's pretty much our ceiling for ammunition costs based on inflation and based on our prior use in years past.
So you can't tell, you don't have a target of like, we'd hope to send 3 people, or we'd like to send 1?
Well, so we're sending 4 in this next academy.
Okay.
If everything goes well, we won't have to send anyone.
Okay.
In that sense. But, with anticipated retirements and things of that nature, it's really tough for us to pinpoint that number specifically. Also, the academy kind of moves the goalposts on us as well because the ammunition needs sometimes change. They require more rounds or less rounds depending on the training iteration. So it's really tough for us to pinpoint.
Okay, well, thank you. I wish the 4 people good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're in discussion. Any more thoughts? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes. Thank you, Deputy Chief.
Thank you.
All right, Mark Russo, come on up.
Good evening. This is a resolution authorizing the award of contract to AA Asbestos Abatement Company in Johnston, Rhode Island for the removal and disposal of asbestos per our asbestos removal plan in an amount not to exceed $16,320. As you remember, I was here on April 22nd to get approval for the floor replacement at the highway garage. We had a production meeting, and the production manager questioned whether the black mastic was showing through the epoxy flooring, if it contained asbestos. So we contacted our testing company. They came in, tested 10 spots in the building, and all 10 came back hot. There is no asbestos in the tile or the epoxy flooring. It's just in the mastic. And it's a 4% chrysotile asbestos. So it's still used today in manufacturing. So they may have, when they put it down back in the 70s, I was 10 years old when the building was built. So, it's just been going on and on and on. So just asking for the resolution that we can have this asbestos abated, removed, and disposed of properly.
All right, thank you, Mark. Go ahead.
So I didn't know what mastic was. I just Googled it. It looks like it's a black, like skim coat.
Yes.
Epoxy type material.
It's a glue. Yeah.
Glue, yeah.
Yep.
So.
All right. Any questions for Mark? Go ahead.
Just one, is there any kind of file or history of having done abatement on the facility before? Most of asbestos abatements started to be done in the 80s.
Correct, but with this certain type of asbestos, the Biden administration in March of 2024 just finalized the rules where they can start to phase it out. It's going to be 12 years before they can phase it out totally. So it's still being used today.
Okay, so thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Do I hear a motion on this item?
Motion to approve item 9L.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
All right, now we got item M. I don't believe Jamie Rabbit is here, but this is merely a resolution authorizing the town clerk to advertise by reference for order of notice a public hearing relative to proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance, Article 3, use regulations, and Article 5, supplementary regulations that would allow accessory drive-up windows for financial institutions as shown on Exhibit 3 attached here 2. Amy, go ahead.
I just want to note, there was just a typo discovered. The section referenced, I want to say it was 50418, it should be changed to 504-20. That typo will be corrected before the ad goes in the paper.
All right, thank you. All right, I'll save questions I have for the next meeting related to this.
So just for people's awareness that it looks like People's Bank is moving into the old Bobby G's and it's looking to put in a drive-through. I just want to say it so we raise the awareness of the community so people go, I had no idea this was happening. At least it's one more time we can say it out loud. That's the way I feel that we should just promote it and just for that.
All right, and we'll take up any questions we have on it at the public hearing at the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Do I hear a motion on this item?
Motion to approve item 9M.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item 10, Town Manager's Report.
So I'll bring up Luke Murray, who can go over, there's really one item on there. It's the school building committee and what's going on with that, a status update and where we are with the owner's project manager and the company that was just hired, Gilbane, and just to keep the council informed at every meeting on where we're going every couple of weeks.
Thank you. So I'll be brief. We had a meeting last week. We discussed the updates on the contracts, which are moving along. Jim and I did have a meeting to discuss the architectural fees, and I have spoken to the architect about some counter proposals that we're working on. The hope is to bring it to the next council meeting for award. There is a document that I was received today that will have to be signed by the council president. Ideally tonight, I have that printout, but that will be going to RIDE to qualify us for the bonuses. Has to be signed by the council president, the superintendent of schools, and the chair of the school committee. So that hopefully will be done by tomorrow. We can get that in along with the CMAR contract, which has now been signed. So the good news is that we should qualify for the bonuses. Our foot's in the door, so to speak. The council should be aware, and the public should be aware, we will be having a meeting on Thursday, the 27th, at 8:30 in the morning. The committee has decided to move to morning meetings. Much of what we're going to be dealing with is the business of, more the technical business of the building committee. But we will be having community listening sessions, the first of which will be July 30th, which will be going out soon, publicized, for community input. What we'll be discussing on Thursday to note is that we'll be reviewing the OPM services to date specifically. So when that contract was awarded by the school department for the Phase 1 services, there was always a commitment to come back prior to Phase 2, review the services before making any recommendations to council. So we're really taking this opportunity to do a deeper dive on performance to date, good and bad, provide some feedback to left field, and the school committee can weigh in on a recommendation whether they want left field to continue, which would prospectively come back next month, or if they want to move in a different direction. So I would urge you and others to tune in. Hopefully it'll be constructive feedback to that team. And with that, I'll entertain any questions.
All right, thank you, Luke. Any questions?
Does the you mentioned the school committee, does the OPM come back here for contract?
It comes back here for contract because, you're the fiduciary. This new contract, which is upwards of $2.6 million, was their proposal for the Phase 2 services. So that would be under this council.
And thank you very much for the very detailed information about submissions to RIDE by June 30 and qualifying for the bonuses.
No problem.
So the OPM is in place through stage 2. We're going to go to stage 3.
So they would be, I'm calling it Phase 2. We had split the OPM services Phase 1, Phase 2, not to be confused, but you're right. The stage, so we're actually entering stage 3, stage 4. The OPM would essentially carry us right through construction up until the very end.
So
under this
three more,
contract.
they'll be the OPM for the next 3 years.
If
Two and a half.
if selected, yes.
Okay. Just, so the meetings are live streamed and available on the YouTube channel?
That's correct.
Okay. Just saying it.
Yeah, they will be continued to be live streamed so people can watch at their convenience.
All right, thank you, Luke. Any more questions? Go ahead.
When will RIDE approve the application?
So-
And start to release the funds?
So they've already approved the application, right? We received the award letter qualifying us for the bonuses and everything. Really, the next steps are to move and have the reviews through the stage 3 process. So RIDE will be in lockstep. We have, I believe it's 3 review phases. They'll be reviewing the drawings and working with us. The reimbursements don't happen till later because obviously we're fronting all of the funds and then they're essentially reimbursing us through the payment process. So that will occur later.
When would the PAYGO start?
So PAYGO, I could have a whole conversation on PAYGO. PAYGO comes at the, like when we start fronting funds, which could be sooner than later, a portion of the PAYGO could be distributed to the town. So we have to put money out in order to receive a portion of the PAYGO. Even though it's fronted, it's not fronted like they give you a check. Basically, you get a third of what you put out. So Brian could fill you in a little bit more on that, but essentially, we could qualify early because we're going to have to put money out for all these consultant contracts. That qualifies. So we could use PAYGO up front to pay some of that instead of floating the bond anticipation notes. Again, this is fiscal stuff that's going to go on with Brian and looking at the goal here is to push off interest and any unnecessary expenses as long as possible. That's the overriding thing, is we want to be fiscally sound going into this. And we'll keep the council updated, obviously, as we proceed with that.
All right. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Jim.
That's it. That's all we have, is that one item.
So I have a couple of questions, if it would be okay.
Go ahead.
New topics. So I did ask, I just wanted to say it for the community about the facade improvement plan. I know Jamie's not here, but we talked today a little bit. Can you just talk about where that stands?
So the deadline, Luke, I'm going to bring you back up just to give a little more discussion on that. So we did not get as many applicants as we thought we would. So Jamie Rabbit has talked about the planning director of maybe getting an architect involved to help people move along, like as a consultant. But did we move the final date, Luke, forward?
We did. We moved it out to the 6-week deadline, which I don't have in front of me, unfortunately, but I will look it up and get back to you. It is posted on the web. One important point is both Jim and I have been attending the Wakefield Village Association meetings and working directly with that business group. Well, we have a meeting next week, next Tuesday, which we'll be publicizing starting tomorrow. Jamie's out, so I'm going to be picking up that task to get that publicized. But it'll be a work session for anybody who would like to attend to a workshop on the facade improvement program. It'll be over at Arnold Lumber starting at 6 o'clock next Tuesday. And they'll be putting that out to their membership, and we'll try to cast the net as wide as we can. And the goal is to kind of coach them through this process. Sorry, 6 p.m. That's a little earlier than you'd like. No.
I know Greg starts his day at 6.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, 6 p.m.
Awesome.
The website indicates July 19th, and I did get a question from a constituent over the weekend. What happens once we've gotten to July 20th if there aren't that many people? Do we extend again, and does that begin to run into ARPA problems?
I don't think we're at that point. We have to worry about the opera problem yet. But I think what happened is unforeseen to us, is that some people are intimidated by this process. Some people really don't know how to get to that point where they're submitting their plans and so forth. So that's why Director Rabbit is thinking of hiring an architect to assist townspeople, business owners, to help them design the plan. We have checks and balances in there. We're not handing checks out. They need plans. So to answer your question direct, I'm hopeful we have enough good applicants to take up that $1 million that we have allocated. If not, then we probably would extend it again.
For what it's worth, the conversation that I had over the weekend, the individual indicated that part of the problem was initially getting the 3 bids that were required, and then I believe that was reduced already to 2.
Yes.
Even that is apparently proving problematic. I don't know how that factors into what you do.
Yeah, we did not foresee, we thought it would be overwhelming response to this, and it's not from a lack of interest. I think it's like a bureaucratic process, I guess we'd call it. But we're refining that, and we'll go to any level we need to go to get the right number of people to accomplish what we want to do on Main Street.
It's also an unusual governmental exercise to give money to private landowners to fix up their property. So I think that's part of where the intimidation comes from. We just got to educate people better.
Yes.
And to the point, we've expressed when we've gone to these meetings is that this is new for us, and Jamie said this as well, it's new for us. We're remaining flexible. We'll adapt as we go. You mentioned the ARPA deadlines. I'm not concerned because we've already allocated the money, which was real deadline this year. So we have time to implement until 2026.
Thank you. And so my other question is for the solicitor. So I don't recall when we last had a litigation update, so that perhaps at the next meeting or a month from now, if we could get just an update from where we're on several matters related to litigation, if you could bring that forward.
We'll have that prepared.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. It's going to bring us now to public comments, formerly known as comments from interested citizens. At this point, I invite anyone who wishes to speak on any matter whatsoever to come on up. We just ask that you introduce yourself. We're going to limit you to 5 minutes. We're going to ask you to use that clock once it starts winding down, to use it as a way to pace yourself for the 5 minutes. But with that said, first come, first serve. Come on up.
Jim O'Neill, Wakefield. Pacing, all right, pace myself, okay, go. I just wanted to address, usually you don't take public comment on communication items, but Mr. Beasley has put forward one coming up this evening. And I certainly have got to agree over the years here that I like the fact that the next highest vote getters, whether it's school committee or town council, are the next ones to move into a vacancy. I think it's right, it's fair. Awful lot of money and time people put in to run for office. And yes, there may be party differentials, but I think the voters put the numbers out there, and I think that's the only fair way to go. I would also like to see a minimum, maybe 60 days, 90 days, if you have that kind of vacancy, that I think the charter should be amended to make that move. I don't know the right number, but recently, the 8 months, that was a little bit too long, and I don't think that was fair to all those voters out here. So really, that's all I have to bring up this evening. I've been around for a number of years here, from close votes, various elections past, like 2010 and 12, and recently in 2016, 18, 20, where people were promised votes, didn't get them, and the anger and disappointment and the politics between various appointments. We're too small a town to have to live with that afterwards. I really think by going by the vote totals for vacancies is the way to go. Just been too much anger in the past. Basically, I suppose that's politics. So my last 2 minutes here, I'm just going to take a couple seconds and both to Brian and Mr. Manny, again, it's great to hear a report this evening, hear that word surplus all the time. If you followed any of the budget conversations at the State House right now, there are no surpluses. There is no extra money from the government. And the talk of structural deficits are active and on many, many various accounts at the state. So it's good to hear we're doing here, and we've got to be very careful what's happening up there because it will affect us long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Before I start, the public, the communications, when you get to those, would I have another chance to come up during the communications thing?
Yes, Doral.
Okay. All right, so for about the last year, I've gone to quite a few school committee meetings and brought up the issue of artificial intelligence and what it means to education. The district's director of technology has been to several conferences on this subject. This generative AI, artificial intelligence, is coming to schools today. The governor of New Hampshire has a bill, has a contract on his desk to sign to bring ConMIGO, which is the Khan Academy's generative AI tutor, to every public school student in New Hampshire from grades 6 to 12, starting in September. I bring that up tonight because this state is dragging its heels on this, okay? To be 1 year behind is a light year behind. We have to be right with everybody else. The cost is minimal. The whole state of New Hampshire, the contract with Khan Academy, I believe was $2.3 million, works out to about $25 a student. To bring that type of technology to public schools in Rhode Island would be like $2 million. To bring it to the school district, it'd be like $25,000. Now, it takes vision. And if this starts to come up in school committee meetings, which I hope it will, because I've asked them a bunch of times, I hope to hear that I'll hear your support to have this considered.
All right, thank you, Doral.
Good evening, Brett Harrington, Wakefield. Question, I don't know if it'll be answered or not. We always hear about Jim and his working lean, and I appreciate that, and works great for the town. My question is, when it comes to we talked about the non-union, the union side of things, who is the taxpayer's voice during these contract negotiations? Say, you know what, we want X, we really can't afford that, and the back and forth. Who is the taxpayer's voice when it comes to, say, you know, we have the big bond here, the school committee, the school contract, the teacher's contract, who speaks for
So
the
that would
town?
be the town manager negotiates it and the council enacts.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So
You can
on the
further that.
negotiation committee is the town manager, the solicitor. That's new, that he or she sits in to oversee and make sure everything we're doing is followed. There are rules of negotiations. You have to negotiate in good faith. And then obviously it goes to the council in executive session to let them know what we update, which we did tonight on one thing, and then the council gets the final approval on it. I will say this to the town council and to the residents. So these 4 unions we deal with are very reasonable. They're, of course, they come in and advocate for their membership, but they're not adversarial at all. It's a good relationship, a good balanced relationship. So if I had to sum it up in one sentence, though, it's really my team that oversees and watches out, the watchdog for the town, to make sure that we're not giving away anything. Everything is balanced. There's usually concessions given back to get some type of more, there's give and take on both sides. So I'm confident that these 4 unions, we have a very good, balanced relationship.
On your question about the teacher's contract, by state law, the council and the town manager have no role in negotiating that aspect. That's the school committee and the superintendent.
So there's no, by state law, there is no representative, for the taxpayer.
That's the school committee.
That's the school committee, so they're supposed to be working on, for us, okay? One last question. Is it the town charter, or what dictates, or maybe your answer is the state again? So if you guys said, you know what, I know you level funded them, but if you wanted to go below that, who dictates that you can't go below that? If you you thought that it was necessary, or you felt it was, responsible to do that.
So it's the town council, the responsibility we have is to set the amount that gets transferred. The law says that you must give them the same amount as last year. I might get it wrong, Doral, so just bear with me for a second. Unless you have certain conditions, one of which is declining enrollment. So the town council could authorize a less of an expenditure. It's not been tested in other communities. It would obviously be litigated on their part. Is the word Carullo the right word? Is it a Carullo lawsuit?
Yeah, state level, the level funding requirement is a matter of state law.
So
So you can't go below, or you could.
we could, but it would trigger this response from them. We would be in chaos, probably.
State law provides limitations on our ability to do it.
Well, I'm just saying, under this big umbrella now of this
So
ginormous bond we have in front of us, we're looking at everything in fiscally responsible. So, we got the rest of the town to run, and we know how much, 78% of the entire budget gets pushed to the schools. So it's things that need to be looked at.
I agree with you. We have walked away from these meetings and we have battled about $50,000 or $5,000, and people have, gritted their teeth, and
Yeah.
we've grinded
Well,
our
it
gears.
is,
And
nobody wants to
a
give what
lot
they
of-
have,
And a lot of money just goes to the schools, and we go, there's your transfer, and we have no influence. We can meet in public and talk about the importance, and the community can come to the budget hearings and say things. But the community needs to use, we saw the example from this family and their neighbor who advocated for accessibility. The community needs to go to the school committee and say, there's this need, and this need, and that's your influence. Those are our neighbors serving on that board. They are the management in negotiating with labor, the union.
It's never been tested doing the
Right.
Cost per student. I don't think it's a bad thing to look at.
Just two more points with respect to the question you raised. Even if the council chose to reduce the funding year to year, and for the last 5 budgets, we've held level. But even if we chose to, under the formula that is theoretically allowed, Deb's right, there would be litigation because even as you reduce, you have other statutes that you are required to comply with. Amy might be able to do this better than me. Basic education plan is one of them.
Special education costs.
Special education costs. And if you trip over those statutes, then you're not only going to be held responsible for more money, but you're also going to have litigation costs on both sides. We wind up paying their attorneys.
Like I said, I see where you guys do fiscal responsibility, you guys in front of me. I personally just don't see that out of the school committee. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe I need to go to school committee meetings and see what's going on there and see if they do actually push a little bit of against the union, or as opposed like, may I have another? And all right, thanks.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wish to speak? All right, we're going to move on. Communications. 12A is a communication dated May 22, 2024 from Lori Miller Horton concerning pedestrian safety issues near the Patty Hill Road neighborhood in Peacedale, continued from May 28, 2024. Lori, come on up. Rich Bourbonnais, come on up. Deputy Chief Bucco, if you want to come up as well. All right, Lori, we know that there are some concerns that we would get addressed tonight, which is continued from a month ago at the second meeting in May. So if you just want to give a I'll give an introduction here.
I was waiting for the information from...
Yeah, exactly. So just to give a little briefing
Lori,
here.
Just go and speak if you're going to say. You're waiting. Say that part into the public because they can't hear you.
I am not sure what you're looking for from me. I thought that we were waiting for additional information. My position
maybe
is...
just say hello, it's good to be back. I'm happy to hear
Okay.
a readdressment of the
nice.
issue. And I look forward to hearing from Rich Bourbonnais on what the results of the study has been since we last met.
That's perfect.
Rich, come on up.
So I provided a memo. I believe that you've received that. And, I'm still in the same position that I was. Some additional information in here includes some cost estimate for what sidewalks might be. Presently, there are sidewalks just on the southern side of the road. And there are sidewalks on the northern side of the road, but only for a certain section near the school. To go from the school all the way down to North Road, and then about, $450,000. I'm still in the same place I was. I'm looking at, and I've explained my position in this memo, but I'm still looking at decision site distance as my biggest concern. I'm concerned that when you're coming by the school, there's a lot of activity. You're not necessarily focused ahead. You're looking at people crossing, people pulling in. You may be behind somebody pulling in, and then all of a sudden, you're on Patty Hill. And so I'm still concerned that there's not enough distance there. Now, at the request of the town manager, and I can explain a little bit, Jim, if it's okay, that...
Go ahead, Rich.
So, at the request of the town manager, DOT requested of their traffic engineer. They keep traffic engineers, in this case it's Crossman Engineering, around to do studies like this. So, and they graciously offered up a study and it was from Crossman Engineering. Now, it was Jim Cronin that prepared it, very qualified. I know who Jim is, and he's been around the block. And what he came up with was he was looking at stopping site distance, suggested that the stopping site distance is adequate, which I've said that he didn't take into account the slopes and all those things, but it doesn't make a difference. There is enough stopping site distance. But what he also looked at, which was interesting to me. It took it much further. What he did was he looked at the justification or the warrant for a crosswalk at Patty Hill. Now, like I've discussed, this is a mid-block crossing. And mid-block crossings aren't always very desirable because traffic's moving, and everybody can understand why, because you've all experienced them. You know that it's a little more difficult to, perception-wise when you're driving along and there's a crosswalk. And I think everybody can understand that, maybe not, but I see it when I'm out there. I think they're a little more difficult to navigate. Okay, they're a little more difficult to navigate, but what he points out is that there's a certain number, I can't remember what the number was, but a certain number of crossings that have to be happening in order to warrant a crosswalk in that spot. In this case, they observed only 6 people crossing at that spot, just running across the street at that spot, and that doesn't warrant a crosswalk. So their position is that it's just not warranted. They say now if you wanted to do it, you could. I'm still suggesting that there's not enough stopping sight distance. So I'm still at the place of I can't recommend that we put a crosswalk in this spot. That's just generally where I'm at, based on multiple bits of information. And I think that effectively sums it up. Now we could in the future look at putting sidewalks in here. Now there are other things, and we also determined there's approximately 11 children that live on that road. There is a bus stop there. There is a bus stop at that spot, by the way. That was 10 years ago. It's a kind of an odd conclusion to come to stop a bus there, to drive it 500 feet to a school, but that's what the decision was back then. So there is a bus stop there. But I think in the future we could look at making some improvements on this road. I don't think it's just this. I don't think it's just the sidewalk. I think that, an elevated crosswalk down by the school would help. I think elevated crosswalks, perhaps even at North Road. I think there are other things we can do in this zone, but it's a much bigger project. That's a total reconstruction of the road. It's something we have to really talk about in depth, perhaps at capital, in the time of the capital improvements time.
We've pained over this one. I've gone out myself numerous times. The chief has gone out numerous times. Rich has gone out many, many times. So this isn't something we took lightly. It's not something we're saying no for the sake of saying no. There have been other crosswalks in town that people have asked for, and you have some good traffic experts here. The chief police, I've been in traffic, Rich is the engineer, he can read things. The problem we have is this. Here's where it really comes down to. You can't just put a stop sign, crosswalk, anything, just drop it in the middle of somewhere, because then the people using it, there's going to be an expectation of safety. And Rich said something to me that stuck in my mind. And he said, I would not be able to sleep at night thinking that I'm putting someone standing in that crosswalk that they think they're safe and they're not. We went way above and beyond. I went to Rhode Island DOT, called it the chief engineer, and said, could you please put your eyes on this? He's a resident of the town. Could you please, and he said, I'll do one thing better. I'll hire a company to give us a really better look at this. And they were going, their bottom line is they do not recommend it for other reasons, right? It did not, even though the number of people crossing wasn't that high, it's just that they gave a number like 5, if you're going over 5 miles an hour, you can stop in that line of distance. But we got a speed study done today. There were numerous vehicles going, there were 30,000 vehicles, 32,000 vehicles using that road. 32,000 vehicles. When I had to read that number twice, crossing that, going up and down that road in a 1-month period, that's a lot of vehicles. That's right, in a month, I'm sorry. What that tells me is there are some roads you just should not cross. That's a busy, busy road. So,
and that doesn't take into account URI being in session.
I mean, May 9th was the end of finals, so if you
Right.
did that in the last month, they're not
Right.
here.
And even the study that was done, that DOT commissioned, didn't take into account URI. And we're still looking at a 31 mile an hour, 85th percentile, which is a little bit high. I'd imagine it's even much higher during school. So like I said, I think this road warrants some significant traffic improvements. Not this, because this isn't a traffic improvement. I think it warrants other things that would help, perhaps reduce speeds and do those other things, and we have to look at that. And we do have a mobility plan that we're in the process of, and Luke and I are talking about this frequently. And, those are things that would come out of that. So this would certainly be an area. I think all the school zones would be a topic of discussion in a mobility plan. How do you get kids there safely, and how do how do we get cars around those facilities safely? So.
I walked around up there, and walking up that field at Peacedale School, there's a chain link fence that runs all the way up there. Is it possible to put a gate up where Patty Hill meets the fence?
I think there was a pathway, but I believe that maybe one of the residents there, well, I know there was. So one of the residents there may have, in recent years, stopped that access from happening. But there are other properties between Patty Hill property, and there are two that I believe access even in the school property. They come onto that little driveway on the school. So it's not a direct connection there.
Yeah, there was a strip of grass between Patty Hill Road, or Patty Hill, whatever it's called, and the fence, like 3 or 4 feet. I didn't know if somebody owned that or if the town owned it. If the town owned it, why couldn't a gate go there? Because then that would alleviate someone walking to the green, or the village green, to that playground, because they have this brand new playground there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that Patty Hill sits almost like an island surrounded by other properties, but I can look at it.
Okay.
From the look of it in the map that was attached to the memo, it looked like there at the end of Patty Hill Road, there are 2 private properties.
There are.
And then the slope down to the yard, because I wondered the same thing when you had raised it before, Greg. I also went up there with my car, and by coincidence, it happened to be at a time where school was letting out, and there is a bus stop there. I actually waited for the bus to offload the kids. Do you know, or did anybody check to see if that is a bus stop for the kids at Patty Hill, just to go to Peacedale School?
There is. When there are kids in that neighborhood that are going to Peacedale School, they will stop and they'll drive them right over to Peacedale School. Now, when I looked up all the stops in town, and looked at everything associated with Patty Hill, I only saw that there is a stop there for Broad Rock, I believe. There might be a stop there for that, and there might be a stop for the high school as well. Presently.
I also followed up with Brian Mahoney, who's the transportation director for the school department, and he said he'd be willing. Now, granted, we've got a new superintendent coming in, and that's the proper chain of command, but they'd be willing to entertain a discussion if there's a question about kids getting on the bus rather than crossing the street to the sidewalk. That may be an alternative solution if they're not already doing it.
Well, there is already a stop there for Peacedale School.
For Peacedale, okay.
Right. That's what I've been, this came up again 12 years ago, and that was the solution at that time. So I believe since then, there's been a bus stop there, and I believe that Ms. Horton has said the same thing. There is a bus stop there.
For Peacedale.
Right.
All right, any other questions for Rich? Lori, you want to come up? You want to say anything here?
I'd like to dispute a couple of facts. She said there's only 11 children on Patty Hill. That is not correct. There are 14 families. There are at least 18 children of school age up there, or below the age of 18. There is a bus stop there, but it's not for high school. Do you want your 14-year-old half-asleep teenager crossing Patty Hill Road at 7:30 in the morning when URI students are driving by hungover and on their phones? The high school kids walk to school. And there is no way for them to get to school except crossing Kersey Road.
Is there a reason that it couldn't be a bus stop for the high school?
Nobody's ever proposed that or suggested it. I don't know. But I'm telling you that the kids at the high school cross that road every single morning to get to school, unless their parents drive them. And they say that only 6 people crossed the road. I haven't seen the study. This is the first I'm hearing this information. So I don't know what time of day or what day they counted people crossing. But just the high school kids going to school, you're going to have more than 6 crossings. You've got about 6 kids in high school on Patty Hill. I'm not sure, maybe 5, and each of them crosses twice, so there's 10 right there, and that's without anybody else. So I don't know where they got only 6 people crossing. I also know that every single time a lot of the young kids there have to go visit a friend or go anywhere in town, their parents have to wait until their parents can put them in a car and drive them. That's not the kind of town we want to have. That's not what our mission is. That's not the pedestrian friendly and all these other things that you want South Kingstown to be. When you've got 14 families that literally are an island, like he said, and they can't go anywhere. It's a question.
Yeah, this is really hard because we're hearing from an expert engineer say, if we present it as you're asking us to help you, and but what his expertise is saying, it's not a safe option. It's a false.
The expectation of safety. I'd like to address that.
Yeah.
I understand, that term has been thrown out in this meeting, the last meeting, and a lot of phone calls and meetings that I've been to. And I'm still trying to get my head around that. If a crosswalk creates an expectation of safety, then why do we have any crosswalks in town? Why are there any? If a crosswalk makes people more unsafe, which are the exact words that I've heard a number of times in this matter, then why don't we black them all out and get rid of all the crosswalks?
That's not what's being said.
I thought it was because the road isn't safe, and just putting a crosswalk there wouldn't make it then all of a sudden become a safe crossable road.
No, maybe, but isn't it going to make it a lot safer? Would you rather cross there with a crosswalk or without one?
I think the problem with the road is just a structural one, and it's as a result of the way that the traffic flows, the curves in the road, and that really putting a crosswalk there is really just putting paint on the road. So it's not going to do anything to solve the real problem. And so you that's seeing the paint on the road may feel, oh, that makes us safe. But the person that's coming down the road, they don't necessarily even see the crosswalk, and the traffic flow is still the same way. The sight line, I remember Rich talking about, there's a stopping distance and all these things. So it creates a false sense of security. So it's not actual security, but it might make the kid feel that they were safe when in fact they're not.
A crosswalk would make me feel safer. I always cross at crosswalks rather than mid-block because...
And there is a crosswalk 400 feet away.
That you can't get to. How would you get there?
Well, if you're talking about coming down from Patty Hill Road, I assume that what would happen is, granted, I don't like the way it looks, but that goes back to Rich's point about the capital improvement program for a sidewalk, is you don't cross, you walk along
Would you
Kersey
turn
Road,
left or right?
Turning left
Okay.
to go 400 feet to,
500
Old
feet
North
to
Road,
Old North Road.
North Road, and then
And
go
then
across
and
in
then-
the crosswalk,
And then
down.
come all the way back down Kersey Road to get to the playground or the school?
That's the available remedy we have at the moment.
Yeah. You're in the lane of traffic for a small part of that left-hand turn. There's some grass on some of it, but I wouldn't consider that a safe alternative.
But we're being asked to weigh a lot of competing factors here.
Right. Well, I think the report tonight did admit, if I'm understanding what Mr. Bourbonnais just said, that there is adequate site distance at that location. Is that what I heard?
No, I said.
That's not, can you?
That's not my opinion.
That's not your opinion, but what was the report? I haven't seen the report.
All right, wait. Let's sort of slow down here. All right, let's just back up. You came here with a request to get on the agenda a month ago. We talked about it initially. We asked our experts in town that we rely on to give us adequate advice, so we do smart planning in town. We had them look at it. They even went to an independent source to get an evaluation of it, so they didn't do it themselves. That independent source concurred with them as to their opinion. We're now being advised from our experts, our Director of Public Services, professional engineer, and he's telling us this is not a smart idea, this is not smart planning. We're going back to this false sense of security for a crosswalk. If you put a crosswalk in an area which our experts advise us is a bad idea, that would give someone a false sense of security. That does not mean that every crosswalk in town creates a false sense of security. That means crosswalks put in areas where they're forced in which the data doesn't support putting it there creates a false sense of security. We, as council members, we have to be able to rely on the experts, the directors in town, to give us advice in these areas. If we decide against them, that is not smart planning, that is bad implementation, and I can't agree with that. Now, we've taken up your item, we've talked about the last meeting, we had them study it, we came back to us tonight with a report, even an independent report as I identified, and the results still tell us that we should not do it. Now, I believe that we should do what they say. He's presented to us, he's evaluated to us, we've concurred on it. I know that you have a strong interest in getting it done, but from our perspective, it does not make sense to move down that route. That's my thoughts.
I have not seen the report. I'm still not sure about the site distance. From everything that I've seen, the AASHTO regulations, that is a good site distance. And I understand the false expectation of security. I think there are things you can do, like put a flag, you can put up a sign that says crosswalk here. I think that it would make people a lot safer. And at the last meeting, I think somebody brought up liability for the town. And they didn't want to put a crosswalk in and give people a sense of security because it might make them, the town could get sued. I still have a hard time with that logic. If this site has an adequate site distance and does meet AASHTO regulations for a crosswalk, and after all the requests that have been made to the council, if you put a crosswalk in and some car is not paying attention and they hit a kid in the crosswalk, the driver of that car is the one that's liable. If you do not put a crosswalk in, after all the requests you've had and all the meetings and all the talk about this, and a kid gets hit crossing, that liability is 1,000% on the town. If you're making kids and families walk across Kersey Road with no sidewalk, I feel they would be safer, I would be safer crossing with a crosswalk than without.
So I don't know the answer. This is maybe a rhetorical question, but is every road supposed to be crossable? And like, I imagine like we couldn't, and we would, this is the highway, we can't say cross Route 1 here and like tell people to get across in this.
I agree.
Because that's a highway. But so this is a town road that we think is not safe to put a crosswalk. And Rich has articulated the way to make that road safe is to come back and put it in the budget process that we would begin in December. And honestly, I've been on for almost two full terms. This is the first I heard of it was the last meeting, unless I was sleeping through COVID or something. But I don't recall, it didn't come to me or Rory who have been here together for 2. So when you say all these meetings, I just would say, you came once and we immediately acted and directed people to get all this information because the 5 of us, I'm going to speak for all of us, really care about getting it right and doing right. So we want to help you, and it's really hard, but we're listening to people who are engineers, right? Rich is an engineer and a landscape architect, both those things. None of those skills are us. It would be like, I don't want to do brain surgery on you either, so I'm going to rely on what the doctor says. So we have this set up. So I would feel terrible if something happened to a child because I said, yes, just put a sidewalk up because this lovely woman has advocated passionately for a sidewalk, and then something bad happens. I can't do that to my town. So I want to help you, and I will ask the town manager to investigate the sidewalks and to look, like he has, this is the report I printed for you. There's some costs, Rich has got some costs for that. Maybe we can find a way to put it in the plan, but it's not, I just heard about it a month ago, and I want to help you get it done, but we can't do it any faster than the appropriate way.
My first letter to the town council was 13 months ago. It was in May of 2023. And it's attached to the minutes of the last meeting if you want to check it. So the town council at that time just said, you know, go talk to BPAC and the town manager and the police and go see what you can do. And they told everybody to do something and nothing happened. So that's why I brought it back again last
I think the first
month.
time you contacted council was 2012, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Rich?
Well, the very first time was back when
I'd just like to
Vestia-
address one thing here,
Yep.
for the record. The liability thing bothers me that you dumped that on our shoulders. I will tell you this, after logging millions of miles as a Rhode Island State Trooper, that road is not safe to cross. Crosswalk, no crosswalk, red light, blinking lights. 32,000 vehicles go up and down that road. As a parent, I would not let my children cross that road under any circumstances. So what I'm saying is, there are roads like that in town. That kids should not be crossing those roads. This is one of them, under any circumstances. Too many vehicles. And the speeds are high, as we have the speed study. So accidents occur every day all across this nation, including South Kingstown. There was a person in a crosswalk, a URI, that got hit by a car. So obviously, the crosswalk, which was deemed to be in a safe spot, did not prevent an accident. We cannot prevent accidents. But what I'm saying is, I concur with Rich Bourbonnais, concur with the chief, that this road does have an issue, but we do not have the power to stop it. Too many vehicles use it.
If I can follow up on what Deb was talking about, and I agree, you've identified an issue. We're trying to figure out the correct solution. With respect to the sidewalks on the northerly side, or the lack of sidewalks on the northerly side of Kersey, I think that may be a point to discuss. Patty has discussed with the council about the walkable streets, walkable cities programs. Rich mentioned the capital improvement plan. Maybe this needs to be incorporated into that. That's a much larger discussion. But this particular solution, I think there's a consensus that we just don't have enough to say, yes, this is what we do. In fact, I think you've got more than 5 people scared that this is the wrong solution. And that's why there's resistance to it.
I understand that, but right now you can't turn left and walk with a stroller, a wagon, or young children. There's a slope there between the telephone pole and the line of traffic that you can't get around with a stroller or something. So what I'm saying is there's no alternative, and I agree with you, no child should be crossing there. Nobody should. What do you do when you have 2 parents who are the working poor and are working their butts off to pay their bills, and they have kids in school? They don't have any other option. And that's what I'm trying to explain. This is not Teft Hill we're talking about. This is a working class neighborhood. And this town is trying to have walkable communities. And this is not one. This is 14 families that have 0 options unless there's a parent with a car that's running this week that can get a kid in the car and take them somewhere. There is no property between Patty Hill and Peacedale School. That is all private property. I've talked to both those owners. They are adamantly against giving the town any right-of-way through there or selling a piece of their property for the town to put a right-of-way through those properties. I tried that. Unfortunately, that is not an option. The best option would be some kind of sidewalk turning left and heading towards North Road, but it would need to be smoothed out. When I first talked to Mr. Bourbonnais a year ago, he said in the fall he would have his people come over and take a look and maybe we could like grade it or something, but that never happened. There would be some drainage issues if there's a grading done there. There'd be drainage issues because it's going to go right into Brian Kroll's driveway. So I'm sure that that could be resolved if enough people want it to happen. And the problem is that the town council in the past 10, 12 years ago and a year ago and now says, we don't want to put a crosswalk in, let's maybe talk about putting it on the CIP. That's where we've been for 13 years. So I understand your position, but you have to understand mine, that this is what happens every time we have a serious safety issue there.
So at this point, I think we have to factor all of this in to our mobility plan, where we're going to move toward making traffic improvements, and we're going to have to, we know that this area is on our list as a priority because you brought it to the front.
Mm-hmm.
So we know Luke is working on a mobility plan with Rich, and that's going to be our way to address this, make traffic improvements to the area.
What would be the timing on that, though?
I'm not sure at this point. Over the next year,
road.
over the next year or two, we have some bond monies left over that we're allocating toward the mobility plan, which we're trying to roll out over the next year or two. So that is the anticipated timeline of that.
Is it possible? Is it possible like if the families wanted to cross the road or use the road to walk down the Kersey Road either way, that we could call the police if there was a non-emergency and bring a cruiser over and put some lights on just to like slow everybody down?
Well, first of all, it's the kids going to school in the mornings.
Right.
And yeah, you're not going to call, but I can tell you one of the biggest problems is 4th of July and all the concerts at the Guild and going to the playground. They got little kids. They've got, one mom has a wagon, she pulls 2 kids in, another one has a double stroller. Neither one can get to the left. They have to cross it right there and try and get over the curb on the other side. 4th of July, whenever the old mountain field's emptying out, you think you're going to call a police officer and have them come help someone cross Patty Hill? I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I've been sitting here, I have such a good memory. I have no recollection of this. I wasn't at one of the May meetings in 2023. I know it's not about me, but I'm sitting here going, how did you miss this? And there's two meetings I've missed each May. So I apologize that I
No
missed
apology needed, but I just want you to understand, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to say that this is what happens every time. They say, oh no, we don't want to do a crosswalk. It does meet, I believe it meets this, I would like to read that report, but I believe it meets the sightline requirements for a crosswalk, and that it would be possible. I understand Mr. Bourbonnais' opinion, and he's used the word his opinion is that it's not a good idea. Mr. Manny doesn't believe it's a good idea, but nobody's got a better idea. It's the best idea that we have.
So I have the report, but I'm just going to read the conclusion. Based on the information and the RIDOT consultant analysis, concluding that a crosswalk is not warranted at this location.
Warranted. Mm-hmm.
Okay. DPS's recommendation is that the town does not install a mid-block crosswalk at Kersey Road at Patty Hill Road.
Mm-hmm.
In the future, through the town's capital improvement program process, DPS can pursue capital dollars to install sidewalks along the roadway as discussed.
Okay, that's what I thought. It does meet the sightline requirements. It would be possible, but they're using this 11 children, which is about half of the actual number, and they're using the 6 people crossing. And that's why they're saying it's not warranted. That's what they're basing their opinion on.
Lori, I want to give Greg Sweet an opportunity to talk here.
I know this is not a solution, but in the interim, the people that walk the kids with a stroller or wagon, are they able to drive them to the areas that they walk to? At least for now, to make things somewhat safer for them?
One of them is a stay-at-home mom, and her husband works long hours, and I don't know if they have 2 cars, but usually only one is running. This is, like I said, this is not South County Hills or Taft Hill. These are working people that live in this town that want to live there because they can get to the playground with their kids. They can't even get to the Peacedale School brand-new playground.
No, I get that. I was just throwing that out just for the interim until something...
Yeah, I mean, sure, they could call an Uber. But it's not that easy when you're a working family and you're trying to make ends meet. And one car's not running, and you're working in the time your kids have to go to school and come home.
All right, Lori, I think we've really sort of exhausted the discussion. We get it, we understand it. We have to look at alternatives. We know that, and we're going to try to do that. We're going to try to address it through our mobility plan.
But there's no timeline for that. There's no, when could I
Well,
check
it's
back?
not going to
When's
be.
a
It's not
reasonable
going to be
amount
tomorrow.
of time? No, but
It's not going to be in the next week.
When's a reasonable amount of time for someone to come back and say, what's going on now?
Well, this is part of the process. We have a bicycle pedestrian committee that's going to work with our deputy town manager to identify areas to study that are most in need of traffic improvements. They're going to work directly with our director of public services, and this is going to take some time. So I can't identify a time frame for you right now, but we can say that we'll put it in there and we can put it as a priority.
Okay.
And the capital improvement program we deal with in December, so I would show back up the first meeting in December, at least ask for, put a communication item in, I'm looking for an update, I'm looking for you to have this in your capital improvement program. Hold our feet to the fire, because I hope you walk away and go, they care, they just couldn't do that solution.
Their opinion is that they don't want to do that solution. I respect that.
Okay.
That's your vote, and I respect it. I respectfully disagree.
It's okay.
And I will come back in December.
Okay.
In the meantime, Mr. Bourbonnais told me a year ago that he could have his guys come and grade that shoulder and see what's involved in that. That was 13 months ago. I haven't heard any more. Did they ever look? Is there anything ever get done on that?
Well, the shoulder is flat. We went down, we looked at it, and there's not a lot we can do. There's 5 or 6 driveway openings through that area, so it makes it very difficult to do anything. It's not like we're going to have a nice flat grass shoulder there. We also have drainage issues that we're trying to deal with, so it's not as easy as what's being described, but we have gone down and looked at it. It is a flat shoulder. You can step off the road if you have to. We felt like it's safe enough, and then we're, again, the only thing that's going to resolve this is a sidewalk.
For the public's benefit too, this side of Kersey Road is a very steep slope.
Well, okay,
going
so
up.
from Patty Hill towards the school is. The other direction is flat.
But I think at some point in one of our prior meetings, you had also said that there may be a need for retaining walls, even if we were going to put in sidewalk.
That's right. But from Patty Hill to the school, there's definitely retaining walls. In fact, it's reflected in the cost estimate.
I'm looking at the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee now, and note that there is an open position on that committee. So I'm not sure if that might be something that you'd be interested in. We did meet with them back in March. Do we know when they're coming back to us by any chance? If they came in March, no, I know, we haven't, right?
I have been to 1 or 2 of their meetings. I've talked with people on that committee. Unfortunately, I have a standing Thursday night conflict, and that's when they meet. Other than that, I would probably love to be part of that. I feel very strongly about walkable communities and people being able to get where they want to in town. When families live in town, they should be able to walk to the Guild.
All right, thank you, Lori. Deputy Chief, come on up.
Thank you. I just want to get on the record some points of clarification on the speed study. So it was conducted actually through June 10th and June 17th, and that was the 32,000 vehicles in a 1-week period, not including, commuting time from URI. Also worth noting is that the 85th percentile of speed, meaning 85% of those cars were going 33 miles an hour. They're speeding, and we know the speed limit's 20. In the school zone, it drops down to, 25, it drops down to 20. So based on Mr. Bourbonais's analysis here, the site distance is 535 feet. That would be a vehicle traveling at 30 miles an hour. Would not see a pedestrian, especially a smaller child, in a crosswalk based on his calculations. So simple math, if majority of the cars are going 33 miles an hour, it would be an issue in that sense. So I just want to go on the record saying we concur and we support Mr. Bourbonais's recommendation.
And from the chief's prior appearances here, it's fair to say that enforcement is going to be problematic on that stretch of road too?
It is. So it poses problematic just by, the geography over there. There's nowhere really for a police officer to set up. Fortunately, with the advent of our new traffic unit and we have officers on motorcycles, they're able to be a little more surreptitious. And in the last 4 or 5 months, we've had an uptick of motor vehicle stops and enforcement in that area. But it does pose problematic for us, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Chief.
You're welcome.
All right. So a motion on this, perhaps refer to the manager's office to factor in what we discussed tonight into the mobility plan?
I do. There's one item I just want to correct as well, just because we're on the record with all this. So you are right. That is 1 week. I wish I had my glasses on when I was looking at this, but so that makes things 4 times worse, right? But that's one. 2, the study that was done, and we will give Ms. Horton a copy of this. I told her apparate, and I'll give it to her right by the channels, because I wanted the council to see it first, right? So, and be explained, prior to someone getting up. But the line of sight thing I need to address that because it's going to come up again. The line of sight is based off this, and I've read this report about 5 times now, that the threshold is whatever the posted speed limit is, put 5 miles on top of that, and that is what they're basing their line of sight off. We know through the traffic study that the average speed limit is above that 25 plus 5. So therefore, the line of sight, they did say if you kept it at this, the line of sight could meet that requirement. But it can't because this traffic study has shown now with 120,000 vehicles crossing in a month, 32,000 a week, that it doesn't meet the requirement. So it wasn't like one factor was made a decision here. There was a multitude of factors and a multitude of studies and multitude of going to look at it ourselves. I'm not saying, like Rich said, we're not saying we can't make that road safer. Like Middlebridge Road, we've made that safer with 13 speed limit signs, 6 posted speed limits painted in the road, blinking lights, share the road signs everywhere, students crossing signs. All right, that's where I could see this going. But just putting a crosswalk in the middle of a road with 100 and something thousand vehicles crossing, I wouldn't let my children cross Route 1 either. So, I mean, that road is extremely dangerous to cross. So we will work on this in the interest of doing the right thing by the town. But I don't think crossing that road, unless you put, and under any circumstance for any child, is safe. So we will continue this conversation and try and find an acceptable method of getting, slowing that traffic down on that roadway.
So I'm appreciative of that. I just want to add, as you continue to work on this, let's go back and could the town talk to the property owners that maybe could be persuaded to be more congenial on this, and maybe Lori's shaking her head no, but the town hasn't met Jim, and maybe Jim can persuade, the owners haven't met Jim, maybe Jim can persuade them, maybe Rich, maybe the chief, to say, maybe there's an avenue that the property owners would be amenable to some right-of-way, like Greg said, back to the gate. It's worth trying. But maybe if the town manager, if we work on it.
No, it wouldn't be ideal because it also doesn't address the high school, which you made a point of stressing.
I don't have one answer. The liability to private property owners letting children, school-age school children cut across their property is going to be a whole nother issue, and I'm sure that's why they put a gate up. We don't have all the answers. You've identified a problem. She's identified a legit problem, and it's up to us to figure out a best practice to fix it. The crosswalk's not the best practice.
All right, thank you, Jim. How about a motion here, refer the item to the manager's office to seek out alternatives?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item B, an email dated June 13, 2024 from Paul Plotkin tendering his resignation from the Historic District Commission.
I move that we accept Paul Plotkin's resignation and direct the town clerk to thank him for his service.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to move us to item C, an email dated June 17, 2024 from Leslie Kennedy tendering her resignation from the Affordable Housing Collaborative Committee.
I move that we accept Leslie Kennedy's resignation and direct the town clerk to thank her for her service on the Affordable Housing Collaborative.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item D, an email dated June 17, 2024 from Doral Beasley requesting the town council consider seeking a town charter amendment relative to the method by which vacancies in the school committee are filled. Doral, come on up.
Thank you. I believe the state of Rhode Island regulations for state government says that there's supposed to be a constitutional convention once every 10 years. There are no guidelines for cities and towns to have charter reviews. The last time our charter was reviewed, I think Mr. Marin was on, was it 2006?
Yep.
Okay. So we're talking 18 years. The only major charter change that I can remember since then happened in 2016 when we changed how a vacancy on the town council was filled from either having a special election or in the second year a vote of the remaining 4 members to where the 6th and 7th people on the prior election were offered the seat. That's why Greg's up there. So it seems to be working pretty well, in my estimation. But I brought this up to you before about how vacancies on the school committee are filled. Now, as far as I'm concerned, it should be just as easy to do the same thing that you did for the town council as for the school committee. You have people running for, every 2 years you have people coming forward to run for the school committee like they do the town council. You almost always have more people running for those bodies than there are seats. So there are people left over. But the people that are left over, they've run, they've spent probably some serious money for the campaign. They've gone through the process, the primary possibly, writing letters, interviews, debates. So to me, it seemed like a no-brainer that you would go to that group of people first before you went to just picking who you want. Now, So I've mentioned that here before, and I haven't got a very good response from some of you. Now, so what I'm asking is, I would like to have a public meeting at the next your next council session on the 8th of July to talk about 2 changes that would hopefully be on the November ballot for the voters of South Kingstown to make the decision and not the 5 of you. The first one has to do with, of course, how the vacancies on the school committee are filled. But the second one is on how the president of the town council comes to be. I do a lot of research at the Prestel Library, going back and look at Narragansett Times, going back decades. And been doing research for some months now. When I go to the years where there were elections and when presidents of the town council were named, time and time again it came to the person that got the most votes. Now, the process over the last decade seems to have morphed from that. 2 elections ago, Ms. Bergner was the high vote getter. She nominated Mr. McEndy for president. He said he couldn't do it because he was in law school. He declined it. Abel Collins became the president. He had come in 5th. In that election, he had come in 5th place. The last election, Ms. Bergner was a high vote getter. Mr. McEndy became the president again. He came in 2nd place. Now, so my first question is, why would somebody that came in 1st place twice not only never be the president of our town council, but never even be the vice president? That's a broken system. If somebody was running for governor of the state of Rhode Island, if you come in 2nd, do you become governor of Rhode Island? I don't think so. The person with the most votes is the governor. That's the way it should be for this council. If you want to be the council president, get the most votes. Now, if you get the most votes like Ms. Bergner did the first year, she graciously opted not to take the position. She felt it would be better filled by Mr. McEnty. So if the person gets the most votes and they think that they don't want the position and they decline the position, that's fine. But that same person, if the way I would have it written, the person that got the most votes, if they decline the position, also gets the first nomination from the floor for the president. So that's the only change that I think is required. So what I'm asking is that we have a public meeting about this on the 8th and listen to see what the people in town have to say. I think it belongs in the hands of the voters, because when the question about how to fill a town council came before the voters in 2016, you got 75%. You got the 3rd highest amount of votes of anything on that ballot, other than I think it was a change to the Rhode Island Constitution, I think, of the Providence Plantations thing, and the money to fix up the Rhode Island Veterans Home. So it got a lot of votes.
All right, Doral. So I have a few legal questions. First off, Doral, is it true that any request for a charter amendment has to be received by the Secretary of State August 7th? Is that
August 7th? So if you
okay, hold on.
So we'll give you 31 days after July 8th.
All right. So in order to do this, you'd have to issue a notice of a public hearing, so that would have to be, the earliest would be the next meeting. And then you'd have 2 weeks from there to have the public hearing, and then from there you'd have to vote on it, and that would give about 2 weeks to get it to that by the deadline. Is that correct, or am I incorrect?
Can't you have the public hearing then at the next meeting?
I'm trying to, my question is a legal question. Even if we went down the route of pursuing it, would there be enough time to do it?
First, I'm not sure that the council has to hold a public hearing for the action of submitting a proposed charter amendment to the voters. I'd have to look into that, and I'm running low on juice here with my devices. But second, I just want to confirm the council has the sole discretion where the amending the charter is concerned. So there is nothing in our charter requiring any kind of periodic review by a charter commission or by a charter review commission or otherwise. So when a citizen has a suggestion, it's completely in the council's discretion.
All right, my perspective is I would rather not cram this in at the last minute, have a public hearing middle of July, and then move forward to have this on a ballot. I tend to believe that the system in place now works. As to the filling of the vacancy for the school committee, we've had the opportunity over the last 2 terms to fill vacancy, and I think that's been an effective process. The town council and the school committee has had effective working relationships over that time, and I think it's worked well. As to the town council president, I think it should be up to the body. The majority of the body should be able to elect who leads the meetings. I just think that makes sense. So in my opinion, I would rather keep things as is, and I do not support going down that route. Go ahead.
So normally you don't speak first, so it's a little confusing. But I think the change that makes sense, and I think when we had vacancies on the school committee, there's an urgency for the school committee to get a replacement quickly, right? They have business to do, and that would help them because we had to advertise, then we had to interview, and then we selected, and it took time. And at the time, the school committee was very anxious to get up to full speed. They had 2 vacancies, and they wanted assistance. So it's a logical, valid suggestion, whether you like it or not. It has merit and should be at least treated with appropriate validation. He's not asking for a crazy change. He's just saying it just makes sense, it's orderly, and it just happens. It's just like when Greg came on, it just happened. It took a week or 1 meeting or something, like 2 or 3 weeks. And I think the community would appreciate that. I don't think you need to change the charter about how the president's determined, because I think the process sort of spoke for itself. The way that 5 people make that decision speaks to the character of the people at the table. So if that's the dynamic, that's the dynamic. So I appreciate Dorald saying that. I think that whether you make the change or not, people could say, oh, the highest vote getter may be considered, but that didn't happen. So it's the prerogative of the people. You see the personalities and the characters of the committee, of the body, and that's just what it is. I think the logical change about ordering warrants merit and conversation. And I do think it's just a vote by the council, because we were going to vote on the change of the signatures last year, and it was just a vote of 5 people. So it sounds like by you speaking first, Rory, that you're communicating your take on it. So
Just voicing my opinion, as all council members up here have the right to do.
right, but decorum really just, you're supposed to speak last.
Go ahead.
Ultimately, the voters have the say, and they have the final say. And they will have the final say this year and 2 years from now. Every election, they have the final say.
What does that mean?
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you, Doral, about the school committee. If somebody drops off, someone took the time to run, and it'd be the same, should be the same process that the town council uses the next highest vote getter should get the school committee. I think that does two things. I think it honors what the voters voted for, and I also think it eliminates the illusion of political games being played by town council appointing somebody. So I would agree that that's a smart move.
It's what's going on here for years, okay? The town council puts people on the school committee when there are vacancies that they want in the school committee. And then often, those people, after they've been groomed on the school committee, then end up running for the town council. That's just the way the system works. And this town has been run by Democrat. The last time this town had a Republican majority on the town council, I believe, was 1998. So who runs this town? The Democrats. All right, so but what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of letting the voters decide which is the best way to fill the vacancies on the school committee and how the president of the town council is chosen? That's what you're afraid of? It sounds like you're afraid of it.
No, I just explained myself to you. And I explained myself on the record, and I think I'm clear as to that. I don't have any intention to make the changes that you are requesting here. We just disagree. I think the process in place as to the two things you are speaking of works well. And I've been here the last 3 terms, and I've seen some of this come about. So in my opinion, it is not in need of change, so I won't support it.
What would be the process
doesn't
of
surprise
getting
me. You're
this?
the president of town council.
What would be the process of getting this to the voters?
3 of you would have to say...
That's a legal question.
The council has to approve the submission of any proposed charter amendments to the voters. I'm told that the last time the charter was amended in 2016, it was on the council agenda as a public hearing. I suppose public informational hearing. I'm not sure that there's any difference. I guess if we did it that way in 2016, we would do it this way again. I think I've seen other municipalities approve proposed charter amendments going to the voters without a public hearing. But we would obviously look into that if the council wants to take that action.
All right, I'm going to make a motion to place this on file.
Can I say something before you do it? You haven't done it yet, right? I can or can't. Can I still say something or not? I mean, you let her speak for 35 minutes.
We just made a motion. We didn't make a motion to her communication. Made a motion to place it on file. He seconded it. Any discussion by the council at this point related to this? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that passes 3-2. This is placed on file. That's going to bring us to the end of this meeting.
It sounds just like the State House. You'll do well up there.
So, Doral, all I will say is I feel like tonight is a night of advocacy, and I would encourage anyone who wants to continue to advocate, whether it's Mrs. Horton, who didn't get what she wanted her outcome, or Mrs. Maxwell, who got something that was helpful to her outcome. I encourage every student, every resident to come forward and advocate for their position. You can come at the next meeting again.
People are tired of being bullied by you people.
All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We've got a motion, a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, this meeting is over.